It is time once again to join the race as we welcome you to Circuit Barcelona de Catalunya and to race meeting number 2 of the 2020 Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup. But before we get to that, we've got the little business of the support race, the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge, which will be coming to you in just a couple of moments' time. And if you didn't get the chance to check out race meeting number 1, well, you missed out on an absolute bunch worth of great racing. It saw a Red Bull Racing Esports domination. Graham Carroll won in race number 1, and then his teammate Sebastian Job took victory in race number 2, the feature race, and getting himself a cool $1,000 in that feature event. Commander Simsports' Tommy Erskard led early on, but a little bit of contact down at the chicane at Zandvoort meant that he dropped back down on the order, though there were some signs of Commander Simsports' continued push for supremacy as Joshua Rogers got himself a podium P3 in that feature. We're going to have a look at your championship standings for the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup. And as it is right now, Sebastian Job, he's sitting pretty with 72 points out front. And the Englishman had himself the start that all these sim racers dream of from that first race meeting. Scotsman Graham Carroll just 2 points back with 70 points. He, of course, won that sprint race, but then he got himself a podium, second place in the feature. He's going to be really happy with that as Red Bull Racing's Esports P1, P2 in the championship for the first time ever in iRacing World Championship history. Joshua Rogers, third place with 68 points, and his teammate Tommy Erskard in fourth with 59 points. Brian Lockwood rounds out your top 5. Dane Warren, he was a standout performer in his first ever race in the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup. He's in 6th place in the championship right now. But of course, there's one man who's missing from that top 10. That was Max Benecke, who is looking to have a much better weekend as we head ourselves to race meeting number 2. And here we are at Circuit de Catalunya. It is a track that so many race fans around the world know because of the fact, of course, it plays home to Formula 1 testing. For many years, it's been that first stop on the European slate of racetracks that we see over the course of that kind of late spring into the summer and then early autumn. It's a track which is difficult. It's technical. We're going to have a look at that track graphic in a moment's time, but here's a look first at what we've got coming for the rest of the season. It's been 2 races back-to-back, but then we have a 2-week break before Donington Park in a couple of weeks' time. And then June, it's all about Circuit de la Sarthe, 2 very demanding tracks, one after the other. After Circuit de la Sarthe, Le Mans, we go to the legendary, the fabled Nürburgring Nordschleife before coming back to United Kingdom for round 6 in Silverstone, Road Atlanta, Brands Hatch, Circuit Spa-Francorchamps, and Monza rounds out your 10-race meeting season. So then let's have a look at this racetrack a little bit more, shall we? Because it's a track that is based in the Catalonia region of Spain. We zoom then on the Vodafone, Google Maps, and, well, we're in Europe still. And this track, as I said, it's one that so many people recognize with European racing, be it Formula 1, be it touring cars, be it, of course, the Porsche Mobile 1 Super Cup. And here's a look at the track. Sector 1, it stayed the same ever since it started being a part of that Formula 1 calendar. Sector 2, it's a little bit more technical. You need to have that aero working for you. Sector 3 is what has changed over the last few years. It's gotten tighter. They built in a chicane, and from going from two 90-degree right-handers, it's now a far more technical part of the racetrack. We are just a moment or so away before we head ourselves over to our commentary team for the first of this afternoon's entertainment. It is the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge, and these are 30 of the top sim racers who have run over the course of this week that get to then take part in an iRacing super session. There's prize money on the line. There's so much fun that's coming up. We're going to hand it over to your commentators, Connery Maddock and Paul Smith.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Will. And we're getting ourselves set here for qualifying in the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge with the Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 car. It'll be the first race here this afternoon, right before the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup. And if last week is anything to go by, Paul, then this is going to be an absolutely brilliant event.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all well. Yeah, this is going to be an intriguing race because, really, it's these cars. We saw how close they were able to race last week around Zandvoort, which is quite a tight, narrow track. This is a wide open track for us here today in this event here, and these GT4s, they will be able to slipstream. They're not affected as much than, say, a GTE car or GT3 car, so they will be able to run closely together, and that slipstream down the start and finish straight is going to be a massive effect for these drivers to be able to pull themselves forward through in towards the front of the field here. So definitely it's an intriguing challenge, but there's plenty of overtaking opportunities here. If you get it right, it can very easily, though, Connery, go all wrong.
Yeah, it can very much go very, very wrong. And of course, if you're new to this series, there is prizes at the end of this season. So it's not just the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup that gives prizes. The Sprint Challenge does as well. We will have in total $25,000 to give away in this support series. 15,000 is in race winnings and 10,000 is in season winnings. So arguably here, Paul, winning and placing well during the race is actually more important in terms of your bank account than placing well during the season. Yeah,
this is you want to get yourself a bit of that cash. It'll come in handy, that's for sure. But you still want to win a championship. Yeah. You still want to win the title, you want to be able to get it, but yeah, when you consider that the prize money for this series is a lot higher than we used to have for the World Championship Series just a few years ago, so it's amazing how things have really come on and how partners have come on board to help support these series. It's great stuff to see, and these drivers, they're all going for it. They all want to be the champion, but all want to be that little bit richer as well.
Speaking of championships, though, it's currently Simone Maria Marciano on the top of the standings at the moment. Thomas Petitjean, Samuel Libert bringing things down to P number 3 in that instance. But we're still early doors here. Still got so many rounds to go. So that will be, probably shaken up by the time we get towards the end of the season. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. We'll get to the qualifying session in just a couple of moments' time. But before we do here, Paul, this track's going to race a little bit differently to what we saw at Circuit Park Zandvoort, because I have to argue here, there are a lot more opportunities to go and sling yourself down the inside. You can sometimes make things happen into one, but I'm thinking turn 4 is probably going to be where these guys are making some dives, as well as turn 10.
Yeah, so there is huge opportunities to be able to make moves around this track. Turn 1 is one of the main opportunities for these drivers out there today because of the fact that you've got that long slipstream effect down the start and finish straight. You've then got turn 4, as you mentioned, the right-hand hairpin. It's quite open to start with, tightens up, nips up that little bit, and then opens up on the exit. That leads you into turn 5, which is another hairpin. Turn 5 is an opportunity as well. Another opportunity will be down at turn number 10, down the back straight again, using the slipstream down into there. Really hard braking zone into the start of the third sector of the lap. Those are your main opportunities really around here, but yeah, these drivers, they've only got a few minutes, about 5.5 minutes left of qualifying, and we're starting to see some qualifying times coming up as Samuel Lebert, we're looking at the moment, comes across the line, sets himself a time of a 52.4, I can see on my timing screen. Webster, look at Cooper Webster, provisionally on pole position, but only by 0.5 of a second ahead of Lebert, with Marcheno, race winner for last time out, up in third place.
I don't believe we saw Cooper Webster take part in round number 1, so if you're wondering how the qualifying process to even get into this session is done, there are smaller events throughout the week where these guys can try and compete for the most points possible, and then the top 30 drivers in the points get invited to this super session where they can earn points in the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge Championship and of course race for the prize money that is on offer here today. So Webster showing up and immediately having an impact here at the start of the qualifying session. You see Lebert in second place, your last time race winner, Simone Maria Marcheno. He's currently in third place in qualifying. But it looks like these guys are just about to come on to their second of the 2 flying laps here, and we expect the second of the 2 laps to be faster.
We do indeed. We're having a look at Sasha Gall, by the way, a man who both myself and yourself have commentated on quite a bit on other broadcasts. So he is a talented driver, is Sasha, and he's coming towards the end of the second lap here, up over the curbs, through the right. Try not to ride that sausage curb on the exit of the final chicane because it can unsettle the car, heading towards the final corner, all the way across the line. And Sasha Gall, well, doesn't improve his time.
He's 14th.
Yeah.
He's
it's just moved up now, yeah.
By the way, I just spotted this, which is, if you're wondering why I went, it's because Webster and Toivonen exactly the same time. Up there on the graphics, it's the same on my timing screen as well, so they have identical times for P2 and 3, and what better example to show how close this series can be than those guys in P2 and 3 right now. Absolutely incredible stuff indeed. Gibson still top of the pile in qualifying at the moment. Provisional pole position for him as we have about 3 minutes left in this session. And you can see, I guess, still see a couple of cars out there. Moreno Sorica is out there. Berryman is still out there as well. Mikael Gard is also a driver that's making laps. There's Peter Berryman heading his way through the first sector there. And, he is on his second of his 2 flying laps now. So this is do or die for him. Let's see what he's able to do.
Yeah, the Apex Racing UK driver going in towards the hairpin. This is turn number 5. This is going to be one of your overtaking opportunities here through the left-hander. And then you got to run right out over that curb. Use all of the track that you can. Through 6, the little curve, onto the brakes. 7 and 8, this chicane here. Again, using all of the curb and then some. And then turn 9. This is a very tricky corner. You're going up over a crest here, up over the top of the hill. It flattens out now, down towards turn number 10. This is another one of your main overtaking opportunities. Hard onto the brakes. The nose dives down into the ground. The transfer of weight there. Up over the curb on the right then. Into 11, then 12. Different lines can be taken around here. You can hug it all the way around, or you can veer it off, and then turn 13, this 90-degree right-hander. Get the car as far over to the right-hand side as possible to open up the left here, and then the right. Try not to use too much of the curbs to unsettle the car. Round your final corner then in turn number 16. try not to go too far wide. You can get an off-track penalty for that. And across the line, a 1:52.456. That puts Pete Berryman up into 4th place.
It does. So second row of the starting grid, and I don't see any other cars circulating out there. So the grid is basically set here for the 20-minute race coming up. So Gibson on pole position for the racing here today. And well, is there anyone in particular you're spotting here, Paul, that might be out of position and we might see charging through the field? Because I'm spotting towards the back of the order, did not set a qualifying time, Moritz Lerner. He can be a very, very crucial commodity. And, well, he's, last row of the grid now. Expect to work his way up. But is there anyone else, Paul?
Yeah, thanks for stealing the one that I was going to pick. So there's other drivers in and around. I mean, look at Josh Thompson down in 11th place. He could be a really quick driver, can Josh. He just... One thing I will say about Josh, he can be a little bit inconsistent, and I think he admits that as well. But he's just recently been promoted to the full Williams Esports team, along with Marina Sarica, and I've forgotten the third driver. I do apologise. But yeah, definitely these drivers, they further down are a little bit out of position. Marchena, last time out, the winner, down in 7th place. He's got a lot of work to do here.
Yeah, he really, really does. But we will get swapped over into that race session so we can give you the starting grid for round number 2 of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge. Thomas Gibson and Cooper Webster on the front row here today. Pekka Toivonen starts in 3rd place with Peter Berryman in 4th. Samuel Lebert will start further back, P5. Pezzoli in P6. Simone Maria Marcheno, the driver that won last time out at Zandvoort, he starts in P7 here today. Bashalis Jurgis in P8. Mikael Gard in P9. Antje Hola starts in 10th place here today with Josh Thompson in 11th. Oscar Mangan starts 12th. Marti Piatella in 13th place. Rocco Barone will have to start from 14th place. Moreno Sarica in 15th. Maxime Ramstein in 16th here today. Charlie Collins in 17th. Jake Burton will line up on the 18th grid spot. Rafael Silva in 19th. Sasha Golet in P20. Joni Tankkinen will start P21. Kieran Harrison in the 22nd spot. Kimian Lynch will start 23rd. Arthur LeHook in P24. Lawrence Miskiewicz in P25. 26th will go to Emanuele Petri. Kim Eriksson starts from the 27th grid spot after a poor qualifying. And then those drivers that did not set a lap in qualifying and therefore start right at the back, Moritz Lerner, Sergio Agancio and Mika Vamaki will bring things down to the 30 cars total that will take the green flag here today. We're just about 20 seconds from getting ourselves started here, the second round of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge. Gibson, he's always very, very potent in these cars. Didn't quite get to prove it last time out at Zandvoort, but he's put himself in a good position now for this race at Barcelona, Catalonia. Those GT4 engines rev. We get the green flag. It's go at Barcelona. Thomas Gibson, a good launch from the front row. Webster will probably have to fall in line, but he's being blocked right now by Toivonen as he tries to make progress on his outside, coming into turn number 1 for the first time. Toivonen on the outside for P2. He goes deep on the brakes. Is he able to hold it here? It'll gift him the inside line for turn number 2. He gets a slide up over the curb, just tagged it a little bit, and that means that Toimonen's going to get cycled back through the field a little bit here. Got greedy into turn 1, cold tires through turn 2, hits the curb as well, and all of a sudden he's lost a bunch of positions, but everyone else seems to have gotten through just fine. So Gibson leads from Webster, from now Peter Berryman. He's gained position up into that 3rd spot. Pezzoli and Toivonen further back. Toivonen still actively fighting with Bashalis Jurgis. You can see that up on your screen. Coming through turn number 5. Jurgis not able to do anything in that instance because he now has to look behind him at that Altus Esports car of Antje Hola as the fin is all over the back of him.
We've had big problems further down as he is the move into turn 9. You can make it, but it's a bit desperate through there. And the number 5 of Jurgis battling it out, Antje Hola. trying to keep alongside. It's going to be the long way around the outside though to be able to make that one work. Gets squeezed, so I'm going to have to stay behind for the time being, but we've had major problems further back. Matti Piatella, Samuel Lebert, Samuel Maria Marcheno, Kim Eriksson have all got involved in incidents, and Sasha Gall as well on this opening stages of this lap, so they're all towards the rear of the field. Dive down the inside. You don't normally make a move stick through there unless it's the last lap, and it hasn't worked for the time being. But Antti Ahola all over the back of Jurgis, and Jurgis having to go defensive here.
There we go. Oh, they almost touch, coming down across the grid spots into turn number 1. They get close again. They almost trade paints into the braking zone for turn number 1. Ahola around the outside. Is he able to make it work around there, around the outside of the Greek, as Pasalis Jurgis tries to survive on the outside line, but he can't quite get it defended. And now here comes Oscar Mangan around the outside at turn number 3. Goes a little bit wide, has to be careful. Here comes Mikael Gard now, as we'll see 2 sets of side-by-side into turn number 4. Pasalis Jurgis and Antti Ahola had a little bit of contact. This is frantic racing. They door each other off the corner a bit further ahead there. Antti Ahola trying to hold on to the position he quite rightfully gained, as Gard and Mangan are still scrapping it out.
I said at the start of this race that we were going to get a bit more open racing compared to last week, and we're getting that in the first lap and a half. This is fantastic stuff to watch, but finally Ahola has been able to just pull a little bit of a gap over the second place, the guy behind him of Pasalis Jurgis. But up at the front there, crucial to see that Thomas Gibson is not able to pull away at all. He's having to defend from Cooper Webster. A little bit of front to rear contact there. And well, these drivers, they're on the knife edge through these opening laps. While these tyres gain pressure and temperature, these drivers are pushing hard, but having to be careful not to push too hard too soon.
Mikael Gard has been able to gain position. That's one of the battles that we were watching just a minute or so ago. So Gard gains the position back over Mangan, as they were just scrapping out between the two of them for the vast majority of that previous lap. But coming across the line then to complete lap number 2, Gibson still in the best seat of the house at the moment, but he has a company behind him. You can see the slipstream train all the way into turn number 1. No close moves, no opportunities for moves just yet into there, but Cooper Webster has already shown that he's not afraid to get the bumpers out if he really wants to barge his way through.
It's he knows how it works. Just a little bit of bumping and Morse code just to let the driver in front know that you are there and that you're keeping him under pressure, and he'll be just sending that tapping that little message to say, right, come on, I'm ready, I can go whenever I want. But staying behind for the time being. Thomas Gibson now at the front just looks a little bit more secure in it. I think he's maybe just calmed himself down, taken a breath down the start and finish straight, and that's just helped relax him a little bit, because that's a lot of pressure to be under for the first 2 laps there.
Yeah, it really, really is, and you don't expect it usually for positions like this. If the pace differential isn't too much between the cars, then it's it's better just to sit there, bide your time just for a little bit, just try and get your sights set in, try and get warmed up into the race. We'll see the side-by-side though. So on the right is the battle for the race lead. On the left is battles for just inside of the top 10 there, as you can see the replay there of that move that Mikael Gard was able to pull off on Oscar Mangan. So that's how that happened away from the live pictures, Paul.
Yeah, nice simple move down into turn 10. I said that was going to be your main overtaking opportunity, or one of the main opportunities around this track, and that's exactly what he did there. Up at the front of the field though, Webster looking good. He seems to get a good run through the final turn here, Connery, and that's what gives him that slipstream and that great opportunity down into turn 1.
Yeah, these cars, the slipstream effect in them is not as much as you see in some of the much higher downforce cars where they're just punching a hole through the air. But, you know, it's still an effect here in these, so it can keep these trains rather close. but it's more of a you have to go for a late move on the brake sort of deal rather than slipstream out of the final corner, get alongside, and then complete it on the brakes. You have to manufacture the opportunity using that middle pedal.
Yeah, it's such a tricky car to get used to start with, but once you get used to it, you can really get some good times and good racing out of this car. So plenty of people have taken up the opportunity to run this car on iRacing and try to take part in this series for this support race for the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing. It's definitely great to see, give these people opportunities. We've got action further down. That's car 20. So that's 18th and 19th. Jake Burton, Moritz Lerner on a bit of a charge here.
Oh, Burton down the inside at the S's. He's able to complete that move. Lerner looking for an alternate line through to give him a chance into this fast right-hand kink, but this is not a place where you want to be going for moves. It's the corner directly after the hairpin here towards the end of the lap. Burton's defensive, but somehow Lerner's been able to crack open a line to give him the inside for the hairpin. Can Lerner make this move happen? Not quite just yet. Still absolutely door-to-door coming through that final sector. And Lerner, well, he's still not quite able to make this one work. He loses the line coming through that corner and now dive down to the inside. The big contacts. Lerner, he spins round. He collects another driver behind. Rafael Silva had nothing to do with that, but he gets collected in it.
Oh, that's absolutely heartbreaking for Silva. Was just staying there behind, wanted to just try and reap what they sow in front, and unfortunately ends up getting involved in that one. We'll get to see the replay then, and it's just a little bit of a late dive down into turn 13. He sees the opportunity there, does Moritz, and before you know it, he gets involved. Heartbreak. Oh, and another car coming through, wiping them out as well. But back to live pictures, and your leaders still battling away at the front here. So Thomas Gibson has not been able to pull away here, Connery, but we have seen Thomas in the past in other series being able to put on a real defensive display.
Yeah, he has, and he really needs to draw on all of those skills to try and keep Webster behind him. Because Webster, even though he's been applying the pressure here, he hasn't been showing the nose down into these corners. He hasn't been actively going for this overtake yet. I say yet because we're about 11 minutes away from the end here. About 6 laps by my calculation. You can see, though, through the middle of the corner there, Webster's able to draw the front bumper all the way up to Gibson's rear bumper and just not quite give him a little help through the corner. But then again, we've kind of seen that in the early stages already.
Yeah, I think at the moment Cooper Webster feels comfortable to be in second at the moment, doesn't feel the need to desperately make a move, but time is running out. We've only got 10.5 minutes remaining in this race. He'll be wanting to start thinking about lining up his move now, and he's got to be careful of Pete Berriman behind him, because Pete is rather rapid. He's a quick driver. We've seen him for Apex Racing UK, how he's able to pull out some of those amazing lap times that he does. But really, right now, Cooper Webster is in that sort of holding phase, I would say, at the moment. Just eyeing up, seeing where he's better, where he's not quite got the pace of Gibson. But you can see from Gibson's rear, looking over the rear wing, and really, Webster, a little bit of different lines here and there. Obviously the setup's just differing slightly, and that's what's showing how they're a little bit better in one place and not in the others.
Yeah, like you say, we were just briefly on board there with your race leader, looking back at the train behind him. It's a train of 4 for the race leader at the moment, and you can see in the background Toivonen. I'm just having a look at his lap times. He's not catching these guys, so it's not going to be a 5-car train anytime soon. But that can all change on its head if these guys start scrapping. So that's what Toimonen's hoping for at the moment, in a little bit of no man's land behind these guys. He's hoping that these guys get involved with each other so he can have a chance to maybe get on the podium.
If one of these guys in front make a little bit of a rash move, and or even just start tripping over each other, Toivonen, he's got an opportunity to pull up and get onto this train and make some money moves, that's for sure. He'll be trying his best, but at the moment, just not able to catch up. He's lurking in the background. You could just see him in the background there with the pink wheels. Just you see him appearing there. He's there. He's a threat for if something does happen later on.
Yeah. Webster, though, not the characteristic good exit at the final turn that we've seen him do, but it still causes a question mark in the minds of Gibson as he tries to swerve to break the draft down in towards turn number 1, and you can see that further back as well. So the driver's just constantly conscious of the fact that those cars behind can go for a lunge at any moment, and we've seen some aggressive moves so far this race already, so you can understand the concern. But for now, we've gotten into a little bit of a calmer phase of the race, but I know the danger in saying that as a commentator, Paul.
Yeah, we found that out the other night, didn't we? These drivers, though, they are some of the best out there, that didn't qualify for the main championship, so these drivers are putting on a great show. But right now you've got these little packs, these little trains of cars where they just seem to be in this holding pattern, as I mentioned, and they're giving themselves just that little bit of time to just take stock, wait, and then make the move. But really, me personally, now maybe this is a failing of me being a failed sim racer, I want to get, if I'm coming up to the back of a car, I want to get past as quickly as possible so I don't lose that momentum. Whereas some drivers are happier just to wait, bide their time, wait for a mistake, and then make the move.
Yeah, two very different philosophies, two very different approaches to the racing that we're seeing. And right now, the majority of the drivers just sitting behind at the moment. But I don't think this is going to last for long here, Paul, because look at Webster. He's now trying to really harass the back of Gibson through the final chicane, and might end up losing a bit of speed coming through this final corner as a result, since that final chicane, unless you're just the bravest driver possible, then a move into there is very, very risky indeed. It's better to just line up your run through that final corner and then try to make something happen into turn 1. So Webster, I think this is also partially for him trying to explore and see where Gibson's weak, where he's strong, so he can more accurately judge where and when he's going to make the move in the next, well, it have to be 3.5 laps.
You mentioned earlier about how these cars don't really have that great slipstream effect. And we're seeing that down the pit straight. We're seeing that Webster's not coming right up to the back of the car and then pulling out to make the move. Now, whether he's just modulating his throttle and just holding behind, deliberately holding behind, or whether the slipstream just isn't that good enough that you got to be, say, 1.5 tenths, 2 tenths behind, rather than what Cooper has been so far. I'm surprised by that down the pit straight, but as we say, we're coming into that final 5.5 minutes. There's still plenty of opportunities, but those opportunities are running out. It's the really good run through turn 9 for Webster compared to Gibson, but again, not close enough to make that move.
Yeah, it's just it's a case of that. Oh, look how close they are through the hairpin, though. So Webster, he has the capability to get close, but no obvious opportunity has arisen so far. And you have to think, okay, maybe you have to make one for yourself now, because Gibson's not making mistakes in the race lead here at the moment. So Webster's got to be plotting, he's got to be planning about when and where he's going to make this move. Follows closely coming through the chicane, and Webster's not only got to focus in front of him here, because he has Peter Berryman behind him, who definitely won't be afraid to capitalize on anything that Webster does. So it's a really interesting dynamic in this front pack at the moment. I say pack, it's more of a trio, because Pezzoli's steadily kind of falling off the back of this one. He still has at least what remnants of the draft that there are, but it's right now mainly 3 contenders for this race win.
Yeah, it's a train of cars at the front with just that 3. As you mentioned, Pezzoli's just fallen back, made a mistake a couple of laps ago coming off of the final corner, and that just allowed these 3 just to pull out that little bit of a gap. Not a major one, but again, the different lines into turn number 4 there. Interesting to see how that's panning out. But now Pete Berryman behind just seems to have a bit of a body language of saying, right, okay, I'm I've had my fun back here. I want to move forward now, and he's moving about as we'll look on board from the roof of Pete's car into the chicane then at 7 and 8. All the way over the curb on the right hand side there, jumping over the sausage curb. 9. Look at the different lines taken. More curb taken by Cooper Webster on the apex of turn 9 compared to Thomas Gibson in front. So you can see how there's little different styles, maybe a little bit differences in setup is just affecting how these drivers drive through this circuit.
All the drivers in this front three battle all above 7,000 iRating, and as someone who's nowhere near that, trust me, these guys are some of the best of the best. You get to see the truly very best in just about 10-15 minutes time when it comes to the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup, but these are some of the drivers that did not quite get themselves qualified into that big series, but we still give them the stage, we still give them the platform to go racing here on the Porsche race day. But now 3 minutes left remaining across the line, 2 laps to go to decide the race lead here in round number 2 of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge. And now you can see Gibson's now starting to get scared here. He took a bit of a defensive line in towards turn 1, afraid of the lunge from Webster, but Webster did not go for it. Instead, he went all the way out into the entry curb to try and get the best speed through turn number 1. And you can see now the heat is really starting to turn up.
Yeah, this is Webster. I think he's pulling the trigger here. He's wanting to make that move forward, and it's just ramping up is the pressure here. Pete Berriman sitting right behind them is half a second covering the first 3 drivers, so this is incredible to see these 3 running so close here at the front of your field as they head on towards that turn 7 and 8, the left and then the right hander. These drivers giving it absolutely everything. Cooper Webster again using a little bit more curb on the apex than Thomas Gibson, trying to carry as much speed as possible. You can just slightly end up going over that curb, force your car to run wide through the exit of that corner, but not being a problem for Cooper here. The man from Australasia doing a good job here in second place, but Thomas Gibson, a fair play to him at the moment as we're heading towards the final lap. He's doing a magnificent drive at the front.
Here we go then, through the final sector for the penultimate time in this race. 3 cars, 3 drivers, a chance for the race win. Bezzoli's there to pick up the pieces if it goes so wrong as well. So out the final corner, across the start-finish line, this will be the final lap for these guys. Thomas Gibson, he had a good gap coming out of that final turn, so the turn 1 move here for Webster simply isn't on. He'll have to stay behind and look to try to make the pass elsewhere. Remember, Berryman is still very much inside this fight as well in that Apex Racing team car, so he might be here to spoil Webster's day in particular if he wants to go for a move. Look how tight they are coming through turn number 3, turn number 4, and the next opportunity, but again, Webster is not quite there to be able to go for a big old dive. Gibson has been absolutely methodical at the front of this one. He's been clean and consistent all the way through the race. I haven't seen a mistake set in for that Core Sim Racing driver just yet, but it only takes 1 on this final lap to lose the race win. So Gibson just coming up to half a lap to go for him, and he'll come across the line to win round number 2 of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge, and it will be $500 in his bank account as well. Slight error though on entry to the kink. It's not a big one, but it might give Webster a bit more leeway when it comes to a move here into the hairpin. But again, I don't think he's quite there. He's going to go for the lunge, shows the nose, but not quite enough on the brakes to be able to sling it down the inside. Gibson has it covered, but through the final sector, is there any going to be shenanigans here? Is there going to be a massive lunge? That is the question. Not at the moment for Webster, but if he really wants this $500, then he'll go for it. Let's see. Into the final chicane for the final time. Webster stays in line. Gibson, as long as he can ace this final corner, then he'll be able to come across the line as the winner. And I think he has. Thomas Gibson from the UK and Ireland across the line to win round number 2 of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge at Barcelona.
That was a magnificent drive. It really was at the front of the field, under pressure all the way through that race, and to able to win that one. Fantastic stuff. That was brilliant. As across the line for 15th, and Josh Thompson, and also Mika Vahamaki across the line, so they have settled their scores, and battles further down the order as well, down in the 20s as well. So yeah, great action all the way through, but hats off Thomas Gibson, an imperious drive at the front of the field.
Yeah, that was one of the most consistent drives I've ever seen from Gibson. We've seen very good defensive drives from him in previous series and previous races, but he wasn't really challenged all that much. Yes, he had to deal with all the pressure that was being piled onto his rear bumper, but he just dealt with it. Drove calm, clean, and consistently all the way to the very end of the race. And now we can go through your official race results from round number 2 of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge. Thomas Gibson wins by 3.5 tenths of a second over Cooper Webster, which is still a brilliant performance as a first appearance in this series for Webster. Up at the front, trying to mix things in with some of the other drivers. You see Peter Berryman there in 3rd place, Camilio Pezzoli in P4, Pekka Toivonen in P5. Well, he had all of his excitement at the start of the race and then couldn't find any ground towards the middle and latter portions as he went for a move for the first sector. But Antti Heuer in P6, Mikael Gard P7, Arthur LeHook in P9, Oscar Mangan will finish in Arthur LeHook in P8, Oscar Mangan P9, Morena Surica rounds out the top 10. And then further down the field, Paschalis Georgis in P11, Kieran Harrison in P number 12, Maxime Ramstein in P13, Emanuele Petri in 14th, Josh Thompson finishes 15th, Mika Vahamaki in P number 16 here today. He was the driver that started at the very back of the grid. He gains 14 spots up into that position. Rocco Barone in P17, Kim Eriksson P18, Joni Tankkinen 19th, and Sasha Gola runs out, comes across the line in P20. And then in P21, you've got Laurent Miskiewicz, you've got Simeon Lynch, Jake Burton, Sergio Egancio, Samuel Lebet, Rafael Silva, Moritz Lohner. We were expecting him to make massive moves through the field, but unfortunately, I think the move was too massive for him as he goes for a hopeful lunge through the final sector earlier on in the race and ends up coming through. Well, he towed it back towards the pit lane, so he didn't finish the race, but he's classified in P27. Simone Maria Marciano, winner at round 1, P28 here today. Charlie Collins, P29. Marty Piatella will round out the 30 cars that took the start. So there we go. That's another round of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge in the books. But of course, you don't want to go away because we have the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup coming up next. But Paul, just sum up that race for me.
It was carnage and chaos at the start in terms of the action that we were getting the first couple of laps. And it all calmed down. The pressure was still on there, but still, as I said before, an imperious drive from Thomas Gibson to hold off the pressure from behind, to be able to keep that race win and to be $500 richer. He'll be a happier man after today's race.
Yeah, in terms of the points paying positions, it's all the way down into P5. So $400 for P2, that was Cooper Webster, $300 for Peter Berryman, $200 for Camilio Pezzoli, and $100 for Pekka Toivonen as your top 5. So there we go. And those guys are going to have a bit of a payday here today. And it's always useful to have those sorts of incentives to go racing. I mean, most racing drivers don't really need an incentive to go racing other than go for the race win. But it's nice to have that little bit of change as well.
I think that's thrown again back to me. Thank you very much, Connery Maddock and Paul Matthew Smith. I was furiously typing away there. I remember there was a song once called From Paris to Berlin, but actually here today, it's a kangaroo route between P number 1 and P number 2, because the driver who won this race, Thomas Gibson from Northern Ireland, the driver who finished in P number 2, Cooper Webster, well, he was all the way from Australia. So it is a big difference then between P number 1, P number 2 in terms of geography. but the racing has been absolutely exceptional here today. And of course, the one thing that we need to mention, Simone Maria Marcheno, who of course is one of Racepot's favorite drivers to talk to. Unfortunately, he only got P number 28. What a great race though we had in the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge. We are just under half an hour before green flag for the first round of today's races for the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup that we hear live. Don't need to go anywhere. Hello to everyone watching on Facebook, on Twitch, on YouTube. I'm going to bring you back in, Connery. That was a great race. And actually, I was looking through some of the details of these drivers. Yes, this is a support race, but you know what? The I ratings for some of these drivers is absolutely astronomical. Thomas Gibson has an I rating of 8,791 and Cooper Webster 7,061. These are I ratings that you expect to see in a World Championship Series.
Yeah, absolutely. And the average across the entire session, 6,867. So, yeah, it's a very, very high standard of field here. And even though the qualifying is not based entirely on our rating, you still need to do well in the sessions leading up to this event, although the splits do help you in that regard. But still, it's brilliant to see these guys, especially the guys at the very front, being more fair than those towards the middle, I will say that, but it still gives us some brilliant action inside the top 10.
I'm sure Porsche's Marius Cronenbeck will be happy because Thomas Gibson represents Core Sim Racing, which Marius has been a part of for many years now. So a little bit of Porsche happiness, shall we say, for Core Sim Racing and Marius Cronenbeck, Connery.
Yeah, and well, it's just that sort of weird crossover there between the two of them. But the happiest person is going to be Thomas Gibson, though, coming away with the race win. But we've always known that he was capable. You know, as soon as these cars came out, any broadcast that we did with these Porsche 718 Caymans, he was there and scrapping right at the front. So it was only a matter of time before he grabbed the race win in this series.
And at this stage, we're going to welcome in, hopefully, I'm going to say hopefully, the lead commentator for the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup, Martin Haven, who has been making himself a cup of tea, doing some furnituring or drawing or whatever. Martin, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm not bad. So, this is your second week commentating on esports and the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup. And I'm going to start with the obvious question. The difference between commentating the Super Cup in real life, on a real racetrack, and working with us band of idiots, shall we say, over here on Racebot.
Well, the band of idiots part is no different because motor racing commentators and colour analysts and so on, most of the TV crew, in fact, just live for the passion of what they're doing. Same way, if you were doing horse racing, you'd be passionate for horses. We're just passionate for a different kind of horses. This is exactly the same as joining any new championship. I haven't got the history, I haven't got the drivers embedded in my mind, and that always takes a little bit of time. So that's the big difference. Watching it on the screen, the difference between watching an iRacing race and a racing race, the Mobile One Super Cup, very, very little difference at all. But for me, it's just the depth of knowledge. I've been doing Super Cup for almost since, I think actually literally since it started. Not every single race, but I've done quite a lot of them every year. And so I've got that history of the teams, the drivers, as they come in, as they go out, as they come back again. So I've got all that to draw on. And here in the Tag Heuer Esports series, I am, I don't have the history of last year that Paul does. So, that's the real difference for me. In terms of how people drive the tracks, I'm not sure it's that different at all. The physics of the cars reflects the physics of the cars, and you can only do a certain amount with it. So to me, the racing is very, very similar, and racing drivers, whether they are racing virtual cars or real cars, have a lot of the same tendencies. So it's very, very similar indeed.
And of course, you are like most of us. We are all socially isolating and distancing, etc., etc. In terms of the setup that you have now compared to what you have in the, when you do the commentary for the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup, what's the differences that you've had to adapt to over the last couple of weeks?
Doing it all myself, not having an engineer. Whether we are at a racetrack or whether we're in a studio, there will be an engineer who sets up the audio links, who sets up the video, who dials into the satellite to get the feed and all of that. So we just have to prepare ourselves. The difference here is I'm sort of embarking on this. I've got another 2 different series that I'm also going to be working on during the course of the summer, and everybody uses a different system for every single element, all of which require me to start reprogramming computers, which is something that I've really not had to do for years. So that element of it, again, is different. It's like going back to having a classic car where you have to tinker with things. It doesn't just do it. So that's another little learning curve as well for me.
And I remember you actually were telling us about you building, was it a Mark 1 Ford Escort at one point? Or wanting to build it?
No. Well, when I started, that's what club rallying was, the 1300 challenge. So 1300 Escort, Mark 1s, Mark 2s, 1300 Avengers, and all that kind of stuff. So friends had Avengers, had Hillman Imps, had Mark 1 Escorts, Mark 2 Escorts. And so, yeah, when you start doing all that, you learn the bits and pieces that make them go, because that's what everybody had. So I could still write down a list of the various components. DS11s at the front, VG95s at the back. You need an English axle, you need a Salisbury diff, you need 3-leaf rear springs. All those little bits of gnomery that just are stuck in there somewhere, which will never be any use because I'll never build a 1300 Rally Escort. So.
Now let's talk about this track briefly, because I can't remember if it was Murray Walker or someone else that basically said that the old Barcelona was you get through the first couple of laps, you go and eat a paella, fall asleep, wake up at the end of the race. The new Barcelona, because of that third sector, they've not changed much over the last, 30 years since they've had the Spanish Grand Prix. They've not changed much, but that new third sector has really actually made racing so much more entertaining.
Ironically, as with every change to almost every Grand Prix circuit, it's made it more entertaining for every single category except for Formula One. Formula One, it's just a stop-start bus stop, but without the fun that the bus stop at Spa used to create. But you're right, for everybody else, when you start piling on the speed down the hill from turn 12, then suddenly the car wants to go to places that you don't want it to go, and you have to try and mitigate what you want against what the forces of nature are making the car do. And that makes it very difficult. Every time the car's trying to drift out wide, you're trying to hold it in tight. Every time it's trying to slide away from an apex, you need to drill it. And so it's a very different sequence to the way it used to be, where you came wide round 12 and 13 and just piled on the speed into the final corner. And the real reason that they put that in there was because a lot of cars used to have the mother and father of all shunts on the exit to the final corner. If you're looking at the stream now, you can see the big gravel trap and then the wall before the grandstand. You have to change something because you can't move the grandstand. So you have to remove some of that final corner speed. And that's what the 14-15 chicane has done. So it's made the final corner safer. In addition, you've got a bigger gravel trap runoff area, but the big issue was always running through the gravel and then going head on into the wall that defends the grandstand. So there used to be some very big shunts there. And that new RACC logoed chicane that they've had last 6 or 7 years now has made a difference. And you're right, it's not an easy overtake in anything, certainly not in a Supercup car, but it is a potential overtake. And one of the things that racing drivers like to do is sell the dummy. So they will try and build up in the mind of the guy that they're trying to pass the worry that you're going to have a lunge down the inside or trying to hang on around the outside of 14 and then take the inside line at 15. But you're basically trying to then sucker him into that so you can pass down the hill into turn 5 or somewhere, you know, where you're following, you have more information than where you are being followed. So you have to try and disguise your moves if you can. And that's all part, real or virtual, there's no difference there. It's all part of the racing driver's art.
I'm going to bring Paul Smith into this one because I'm not going to step on his parade. Because Paul, you just basically just posted to me in our virtual universe your favourite moment of Barcelona. Talk us through it.
Absolutely. So it was the first year that they used this circuit for the Formula One World Championship. It was 1991. Yes, I am that old. And it was Nigel Mansell, Ayrton Senna on a semi-damp, semi-dry track, side-by-side, sparks flying off the underside of the front wings of the both cars, inches apart. They were basically playing chicken with each other, and eventually Nigel Mansell takes the place down into turn number 1. It is one of those moments etched in my mind, and it is in my mind I can hear Murray Walker and James Hunt commentating on that moment as well. It is an all-time favourite memory of motorsport, is that image down into turn 1.
And that's the thing, actually, Martin, because we talk about the fact that this is, in some ways, a boring racetrack, but it has had some fantastic racing over the years. And again, for me, I go back to 1996 and Michael Schumacher winning the race and I know it almost to the second, 1 hour, 59 minutes and 50-ish seconds. The first one he ever had in a Ferrari, and a wet track around here at Catalonia is not something you often see, but when you do get a wet racetrack around here, it can be absolutely crazy.
That's absolutely right. Part of the problem with rain in Spain, is that they don't get a very great deal of it. This track gets a lot of use. And one of the reasons that Formula One can be a little bit follow my leader is that it's used a lot for pre-season testing because of the generally pretty benevolent climate. So when they arrive for the races, then the cars are really dialed in because they've spent a week or 2 weeks here just honing the car, and part of that is obviously trying to get an overall setup for the season to go off to Australia and whatever, but part of it inevitably means you've got a good setup for here as well, which takes some of the slight vagaries away from it. So there is that, but when you get rain, then this sort of fairly fine-grained tarmac that they have here, which is usually pretty full of rubber and oil, does tend to allow the rain to sort of a little bit on the surface. It's not like the sort of aggregate that you've got at Silverstone, where we expect rain, snow, hail, frogs, all that stuff, where you have to have it a bit deeper aggregate to allow the water to sort of sit on the circuit as it drains away, but without creating a lake. Here, it tends to be slicker. I mean, think about when you've been on holiday, if you've been driving in a hot climate, the roads are always shiny and very smooth. And if you do get a sprinkle of liquid on it, whether you're following a lorry full of grapes up a mountain road or whether it's raining, then you do feel immediately that is very low friction. And that's the issue here. If it gets wet, it doesn't have to be very wet for it to be pretty greasy. So you're right, that win, a few seconds inside the 2-hour cutoff, is another great Barcelona moment.
So Connery's had his obligatory, shall we say, comfort break. Connery, welcome back.
Hello.
What's your best Spain moment of all time?
I kind of have to. Do I go and please all the Max Verstappen fans and say Max Verstappen's first win? Is that the route we're going to go down?
We can, if you want to.
Yeah, we'll do that then. Just so that I'm on their side, I suppose.
So for you, it's Max Verstappen. Mine is, of course, Michael Schumacher 1996. Paul, that's you and that's Nigel Mansell, 1991. But in terms of the track as it is now, Connery, the track has changed pretty dramatically from that final sector. In terms of the Super Cup, that makes things a lot more entertaining because of the fact that you've got such a long straightaway towards turn number 1 to then actually give yourself the opportunity to draft and pass.
And that's going to be the important thing in these cars that we didn't see in the support race with the Cayman GT4s, is that these cars punch a bigger hole in the air than the Caymans do, and so the slipstream effect is more pronounced in these cars. So we'll see a lot more potential moves into turn number 1. We'll see more moves into turn 10 especially as well, coming down the back straight. But like you said, that last sector, not as it once was, I guess is the way I'll say it. Some drivers actually do prefer, and like most people I talk to actually do prefer, the old layout of just having those two medium to high speed right-handers coming onto the start finish straight. But in this layout we only have one. We have that chicane, and things can sometimes get a little bit tight into there if drivers are a bit too risky.
So at the start of the season we did ask who is the best track and the worst track that you're going to want to race at. Giassi, Perez both said that's going to be their favourite track that he wanted to race at, Connery. And, well, it's one of those tracks that I always say that if you get it right, you get it right. If you don't understand the track, you're going to suffer. For me, the way that they re-profiled this track, actually, it's a bit like Imola. Because Imola has the low curbs, and of course you've got to learn how to run the curbs. Here, you got low curbs, medium curbs, high curbs. You've got those little sausage curbs that just unsettle that car. And you've got to manage to maintain momentum. And if I was to be commentating, the key word I would always say at this racetrack is momentum here in this race.
But I have to say, though, this track may be a little bit more forgiving than Imola is, especially because just due to the track width. Because Imola, it can be in some places a pretty slim and skinny track. So as soon as you go a little bit wide through some of the corners, you're out, past the curb, into grass, and then at worst into gravel and into a tire barrier. But here on some of these corners, there is that tarmac runoff where you can just really just swing it out there and not lose too much time. So the race very slightly differently, despite the similarities of having chicanes placed in the middle of them.
Well, I always say it's unethical to ask people who are commentating the race to say who their winner's going to be. So, who, Connery, is going to be your pick for this, the second race meeting of the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup? About to head to qualifying. Who's your pick?
I think Josh Rogers, he got a little bit of a shock in that first race with how fast everyone else is. He did say in his sort of pre-season interview that he think the field will be a lot stronger, but I don't think he was expecting it to be that much stronger. So I think he has something to prove now in this race. So therefore, my pick for the race winner will be your previous champion, Joshua Rogers.
But what about Benecke? Where do you think, Connery, Benecke is going to be in this race? Because, of course, he had a miserable race meeting number 1. Is Benecke going to step up here, try to get himself up to the top of the field, or is it going to be another bad race for Benecke? What's your thoughts?
Benecke doesn't have a choice, I don't think. He can't afford in a season like this to have 2 dud races at the very start of the season. So you need to get your season into gear, otherwise you'd just be left in everyone's dust. Always trying to recover. So I think Benecke, this is going to be a crucial race for him as well. At least the top 5 here required for Benecke, but I don't think he's going to come across the line as the winner.
So we are about 10 minutes away from the first of our 2 races. Qualifying has just started, and in a couple of moments it will be Martin Haven and Paul Smith bringing you commentary of the sprint race from the 2020 Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup, race number 1 from Circuit de Catalunya, Barcelona.
Green flag drops, away we go from the start of this final feature race in the Porsche Esports Supercup. Brilliant launch.
40 of the best sim racers. $200,000 on the line.
Joshua Rogers is your 2019 Porsche Esports Supercup champion.
Who will rise to the challenge? This is the most competitive and sought-after season in iRacing World Championship history. This is where legends are made. This is the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup. Hello everybody and welcome to the Circuit de Catalunya in the small town of Montmeló, just to the northwest of Barcelona. We're in Spain, more accurately we're in Catalonia, the Basque province just down on the Mediterranean coast by France. And on this home of the Spanish Grand Prix, we are setting up for the second race weekend of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing for 2020. I'm Martin Haven. Joining me for the commentary this afternoon, Paul Smith, who's already lubricated himself nicely with our support race. And Paul, pretty entertaining action on this wide, fast Grand Prix circuit.
Yes, hello everybody. It was a great support race. I really enjoyed that one. Really intense action and a great defensive display. And I think it'll have to take something basically along similar lines to that to be able to sit out at the front, because the slipstream has more of an effect in this Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car. These drivers are so close in timings as well. It is incredible just how close they are. So definitely these drivers are going to be on edge. We may see a few incidents, but that goes along with it being such close action here.
And it wouldn't be a Super Cup race if somebody's car didn't have somebody else's paint on it at the end, whether that's real or virtual. I think that's very much going to be the same thing. And of course, the cars all essentially identical, so that gives a very closely packed bunch. What we saw when we were in Zandvoort for last weekend's season openers, that Sebastian Job and Graham Carroll were the dominant forces with a win apiece for the Red Bull Racing eSport team. Will they come out on top again? Will champion Josh Rogers be the man who comes to the fore? Well, Paul, you've had a look around the Circuit de Catalunya already. Let's take a look as we ride on board with Sebastian Job.
Yep, so through turns 1 and 2, you have to get right up over the curbs there. Turn 3, hug the apex to start with, and then as the corner opens up, get on the power, let it run out wide, up all the way over that curb, and he's staying all the way out there just so that he can open up the entry to turn number 4 here. Again, he's hugging that inside to start with, letting it run out to the middle, and then into the left-hander at turn number 4. Got to get the run right, turn 5 even, get the run out of turn 5 to get on the power nice and early, then into turn 7, over the curb with the left, and then not going over the sausage curbs on the right hander there. Turn 9, again, really fast corner. It dictates your pace that you carry all the way down this straight down in towards turn 10, which was one of the crucial overtaking opportunities. Around the 100-meter board, hit the brakes, get it into that apex, open up the steering with the power as well. 11, bounce over the curb into 12. You're doing everything you can to minimize the angle of attack on each corner and to maximize your minimum apex speed. That's a tricky corner, is the right hander there, and then this tight twisty chicane. Don't hit the curbs too much, get the run out of this final corner to take your time across the line.
Those sausage curbs really damage your lap speed. They disrupt the car. They can do quite a lot of damage. We've seen wheel failures, suspension damage from hitting those, particularly down in that 14-15 chicane. If you hit those hard, and continue to hit them hard, then eventually they will bite you back. But that is one of the areas that we're going to look at for overtaking opportunities. We saw a couple of unfortunate unforced errors there in our support race with the Caymans, and 3 or 4 cars out because of no fault of their own, somebody else's mistake. And when you've got a jostling pack of 40 cars, as we will have, and when you've got a prize fund of not 100,000, but now with Tag Heuer's input, $200,000 at the season's end, then it's more than just a little bit of prestige going on here. 40 of the best sim racers, including Grand Prix ace Max Verstappen, who was quite the revelation when we were in his home track at Zandvoort. Of course, a track that he's barely driven, and in a car that he was not expecting to be racing. On board in car number 33, and this is Ricardo Castroledo. Where is he? 18th in the points. Portuguese driver, lives in France now, races for VRS Coanda Simsport. Again, using all the road on the exit, you can straddle those rumble strips, use the green painted area. It's not AstroTurf, because here, a late apex, really important to slingshot down the hill. This turn 5 can be a big overtaking opportunity, but you do have to push the car in front of you into making mistakes, Paul, and then try and ride the speed down in here. I have seen lunges into 7. Haven't seen many successful lunges into 7 though, but it is tempting as you come down the hill to have a bit of a stab.
Yeah, it's usually involving these cars where they have the lunge down into turn 7, but yeah, you can make a move, a bit of a dive down into there, but you've really got to hope the other driver is compliant along with you. You can see the qualifying times on the left-hand side of the screen as well, as we're still on board with Castroledo through the long right-hander there at 12 into 13. But you know, Castroledo, he really is trying to push on. He's on lap 3, his final lap of qualifying that will be eligible. Is currently 25th in the standings, so he's not having a good time out there. Runs it out wide, and I'll have a look on our timing screen just to see whether he improves. He does, up into 9th place. He only improved by a 10th and a half, and that shows how close this field is.
In fact, as he came across the line, jumped into 9th, I was about to say in 11th was Max Verstappen. Don't forget, he qualified in the 30s in Zandvoort. This is a track he knows much better from his real-world experience, as well perhaps as having a little more time in the car helping. But he's already down to 15th. On board now with Josh Fluke. He's in 10th place. Didn't have, Jamie Fluke rather, didn't have a disappointing time in Zandvoort. He's 7th in the points. A man from Armagh in County Down, Northern Ireland. But to the top of the pile now has gone Josh Rogers. It was Sebastian Jobe who was fastest. 59 thousandths of a second quicker has gone the reigning champion ahead of our points leader. Up into 3rd. Times are starting to come in fast now. Alejandro Sanchez, the Spanish driver. We've got a Catalan driver in the field as well. So whether that is good or bad, not entirely sure. I think that kind of is a little bit immaterial now. I don't think you're going to have an awful lot more love for a track that is close to your home compared to one that you do well at. 4th place, 57 Dane Warren. That's a good run from him. And on board now with 49, this is still Jamie Fluke, the Apex Racing. Jamie, 13th place, currently in the times, in the top 50, in the top 10 in the points, 7th in the points. A good start to the season from him. We talked a little bit about Max Benecki. He's there in 5th place on times at the moment. Last year's championship runner-up, but a wretched weekend, 31st in the standings, with a big fat 0 to his name. So he needs that good qualifying run, and he must, Paul, avoid the trouble in the first sprint race. And because he's further up the grid, there is a very good chance that he might do that.
Well, don't forget that the top 8 in qualifying the top 5 get points, but then they invert the top 8 grid positions. Well, with it being so close, that would put Jared Filsell on pole position for the time being, with Sindre Setsas in second place. But you look at the timings throughout the grid, there is 6.5 tenths covering 39 positions, all 39 drivers out here. We are missing one driver, unfortunately. I can't immediately tell you who that is, but we should be sometime near to getting a grid up on screen for you very shortly, but incredibly close times.
And as you say, Jared Filsell from 8th fastest time gets pole position with Sindre Setsas alongside him. Max Benecke, 3rd on the grid. He has got to take this opportunity, hasn't he? Tommy Usgaard on the outside of row 2 will have a very similar thoughts in his mind, and that might spell trouble. Dane Warren and Alejandro Sanchez on row 3 of the grid. Sanchez from Madrid, so Madrileno rather than a Catalan. And on row 4 of the grid, behind them, Sebastian Job, our points leader, and Josh Rogers, our reigning champion. Brian Lockwood, beg your pardon, great final lap from him to get into the top 10, and Max Verstappen qualifies 10th on pace. Patrick Holtzman was 8th last week, started race from pole position, but had all sorts of trouble. He's now on row 6 with Valtteri Alander alongside him. Further down on the grid, Max Backham and Alexius Jakkala. Ricardo Castroleda, who we rode with, is in 15th. Jamie Fluke 16th. Kevin Ellis Jr. and Jeff Giassi are on row 9, and on row 10, the youngest driver, 18-year-old Thibaut Casubon. He's in 10th in the points as well, and compatriot Jeremy Bouteloup alongside him. Mark Perez, Josh Anderson, Graham Carroll, 2nd in the standings, down on row 12. Not a great qualifying for him. And Gianni Vecchio alongside him, 24th on the grid. Graham Carroll may be in danger of losing touch here with the leaders of the points race, or the leader of the points race, Sebastian Job. And Josh Rogers, of course, in 3rd place in the points coming in. Cars are on the grid. We are ready to go for the 15-minute first race here in Barcelona. Martin Haven and Paul Smith with the action, and our poleman Jared Filsell leads them away as they go over the brow. Look for the number 11, Max Benecke on the outside. In the middle, Sindre Setsas. Jared Filsell holding on to the inside line, and on cold tyres with cold brakes around the outside. Benecke going hell for leather, and unfortunately our poleman Jared Filsell losing a couple of spots there. So it's Sindre Setsas in 2nd place. Jared Filsell leads, looking for the orange nose of Max Verstappen, see what progress he's made from 10th on the grid. But Paul, pretty clean start, but we got to get to the end of the first lap before we can decide whether or not it was a good one.
I think, to be honest, we need to get to the end of the 3rd lap before we can decide whether it's a clean start here. But it's great action. It's great action, that's for sure. Tommy Usgaard, a man who was up in the order at the last round, he's just moved ahead of Sebastian Job. So 5th place for him, 6th for Sebastian. One person I've noticed, Josh Rogers hasn't been making any moves. Brian Lockwood behind is battling, and he's got all sorts of attention from Max Verstappen there. So Max having to go to the outside. It's a tough overtake to make there, but if you can keep it out there as Job runs wide in front of them. Big mistake from Sebastian on lap number 1, and before you know it, Josh Rogers makes it through along with a couple others.
Yeah, Verstappen ran wide on the run down to turn 4, and that really didn't help his momentum. But as you say, big mistake there for our championship leader, Sebastian Job. And Rogers and Lockwood make contact, and so too out is Sebastian Job. Huge drama. 2 of our top 3 in the championship are out, and our race leader is Max Benecke. That's exactly what he needed. More cars off in the background.
Sebastian Job's gone straight to the pits as we look at this Vodafone replay then, and it all starts in front. They all get checked up, and it was Sanchez who got into the back of Rogers. Job gets hit, gets flipped over because of the curbing there, and there was plenty of others ended up getting involved there, but yeah, big drama further down. So Job, he is out. He's in the pit lane. Josh Rogers is on pit road as well. So too is Patrick Holtzman and Matt Backham from a separate incident as well. So huge drama that two of your main championship contenders in Job and Rogers sat there on pit road.
Yeah, Rogers exited stage right onto the grass, didn't he? It was Job who created so much damage. Max Verstappen, one of the cars that hit him as he was battling with 43 Brian Lockwood. So Verstappen now in 8th place, but he has had contact, and 3 or 4 other cars did as well. So let's reset our race. We're on lap 2. 12 minutes of the 15 remain. Max Benecki leads. Sindri Sensas, that's a great start for him. Great to get in that position in qualifying. And Jared Filzel, do you know what? He may not end up winning this, but that's going to help his points tally. Tommy Østgaard in 4th position, and he is 7 tenths behind Filzel. Looking here at the battle further back. Long way further back. That's Marcus Jensen, car number 12. Jensen is down in 18th place, chasing Brazil's Jeff Gyasi there. You can see the Porsche Brazil with that Brazilian-coloured fat backside, if you like. Very easy to identify behind. Looks fairly anonymous from in front. And he is chasing 110. Christopher Dambitz, the German driver. But Benecki out front by 7 tenths. And that is a little bit of breathing room. He won't have to worry about a lunge from behind. There's Benecki 11. Setsas, the number 3 car behind him. So now, Paul, Benecki can do what every driver wants to do. Concentrate on line and length and just nail the laps, nail those apexes, not give it away.
And if there's somebody who's got the experience of leading a World Championship race on iRacing, it is Max Benecki. He knows what he needs to do there out at the front. We'll look further back because Kevin Ellis Jr. having a little bit of a look there. That's on Ricardo Castroledo. So the Scotsman versus the Portuguese driver, looking all over each other, not making any moves yet, but Castroledo just locking up the brakes through that turn number 5. Crucial error, but I just think that Kevin Ellis Jr. just not quite close enough to take advantage of that, and he's going to have to keep the pressure on. But one thing I have noticed is that Castroledo has got some severe damage on the right-hand side of his car.
Yeah, he was another of the cars that made contact with the number 22 car of our points leader, Sebastian Job. Job out of the race, and Josh Rogers, 3rd in the championship, out of the race. So what about the man who's 2nd, Graham Carroll? Number 21 car didn't make a great start. He also made contact with Sebastian Job, and I think he's done. We're not seeing him anywhere on the top of the leaderboard. So top 3 in the points are gone. So who's 4th? Well, it's the man who's 4th, Tommy Østgaard. He's 4th in points, 4th in the race at the moment, with the top 3 not scoring. This is looking good for him, as well as it's looking good for Max Benecki.
Just one thing I have noticed, Sebastian Job is back out on track, but he's down in 36th. There's the last of the runners, and he's all on his own, so I don't expect him to be gaining in positions through moves. As speaking of moves, here comes Kevin Ellis Jr. to look to the inside. No move happening there, no opportunity available. But I think Job really is just going to try and run around and try and pick up any more positions from cars having instance.
Yes, because of course that's going to define where he qualifies, and for the next 9 minutes remaining incident-free, I'm not even sure that's a 50-50, is it? Particularly with the way Kevin Ellis Jr. is continuing to lunge on every corner here. And again, Castroledo drifting out wide. He's using the racing road, but that does leave the door open. And again, he has to defend very deep. Kevin Ellis is really working hard here, and Kevin is leaving himself slightly open to Jamie Fluke behind, but Fluke's not quite close enough. Kevin Ellis of this group is the quickest car. There's no question. If he gets by Ricardo Castroledo in the 33 car, he'll be gone and he'll be on the tail of the Max Verstappen Brian Lockwood battle. It looks like his car 98 came through all of that kerfuffle unscathed. He's looking inside, outside, around the outside he goes, and now has he got the underneath? No, not quite there. He's still, you see, if you had a spot, it would be alongside, 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 not clear, clear now, and he gets through. And that's persistence.
Yes, it certainly is. It's also Celtic nations ganging up on the Portuguese driver as well, because the Scotsman and Northern Irishman battling, and their teammates as well, don't forget, in that Apex Racing UK stable. So those drivers know each other and know they've been working together in trying to make that move. Fluke will want to get by as quickly as possible here. He's got significant damage on his car as well, and he's getting his teammate Kevin Ellis Jr. to give him a little bit of a slipstream down the start and finish straight. That's good teamwork, and there goes Fluke down the inside. Nice and simple. They want to run away now.
Yeah, Kevin Ellis Jr. has done the donkey work, hasn't he? And Fluke, yep, I'll just follow you through. But that's good thinking by the two teammates. So Kevin Ellis Jr. now 10th, Jamie Fluke 11th, down to 12th has gone Ricardo Leda. Marc Perez behind him, car number 14. He's from Terrassa in Catalonia. So this is not only his home country, it's his home region. This is very much his home racetrack. There he is, car number 14. Position number 13, and he too now knows that Castro Lado in 33 is wounded. He can smell blood in the water, just like all the others, and so he too is going to try and find a way by the Portuguese.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how passionate and how proud people from the Catalonia region are of their area of the world, but certainly he'll be wanting to do well this week, not just because it's his home track, but he wants to get some good points and get some good standings for this series. So definitely Perez putting the pressure on, and of course both of these drivers from that whole Iberia region in Spain and Portugal. And really, it's a matter of pride and points on offer for Perez, but keeping the pressure on for the time being. This is his opportunity out the final corner. Can he get the slipstream to run it down into turn one? But he's got to be careful, because he's got Martin Cronke and Jeff Giassi behind. They're putting the pressure on as well.
On board with Dane Warren. We're riding in 5th position with our Vodafone on board, and right in front of him, 58, Tommy Usgaard, the man who may, by the end of this race, be the new points leader. If he's not ahead of Sebastian Job, it'll be very, very close indeed. So the Coanda driver in front, ironically enough, giving that Coanda effect toe to Dane Warren, but can Warren find a way through? The gap between them was 0.2 of a second at the beginning of the lap, and you can see now visually Usgaard is not escaping whatsoever. The top three still very visible in front of us: Max Benecki, Sindri Setsas, and Jared Filzel, the man who started on pole position having qualified 18th. So Dane Warren will have to try and figure out a way to get by Tommy Usgaard, find out where the 58 car is weak under braking, under acceleration, if it hasn't got the traction that he thinks he's got. See the way that Tommy's ramping it over the curbs, and immediately Dane closes right in from behind.
Yeah, these drivers, they're on that limit of adhesion. They're not going to be feeling the effects of the tyre wear in this race, with it being such a short sprint race, just 15 minutes, but they will still be pushing as hard as they can, and there will be a slight... They'll start feeling just a little bit if they're pushing a little bit too hard, and abusing the curbs, making the car slide that little bit, will not be helping, because it'll be putting heat into those tyres, and that can be just as bad for the tyres as well as wear. Track temperature, by the way, 38 degrees, so it's quite toasty out there, not as hot as it can be, but certainly it is quite high, and these drivers are going to have to manage that more in the feature race.
Yeah, definitely that'll be an element, won't it? Not just in terms of car fatigue, but in driver fatigue as well, because they'll be thinking harder about what the car is telling them. And without so much of that seat-of-the-pants information in a sim rig, no matter how good it is, you don't quite get that osmosis effect of the car telling you stuff. They've got to judge it, and that's much more of a mental battle. So Benecki ahead of Setsource by 1.1 seconds now. Max Benecki has really started to stretch his lead. Filzel in 3rd place, Jared Filzel. And in this battle, Usgaard, Warren, Alejandro Sanchez in 6th. Little cheer for Max Verstappen in 7th. But with his damage, he's 6 seconds behind the back of this queue. There he is, just coming into shot. So it's a long way back. Essentially, the tail of this train is number 47, Alejandro Sanchez.
Yeah, great. It is going to be difficult to try and push forward if you've got damage, as we're on board with the 43 car, which is Brian Lockwood then, and he's got Alexius Siakola in front. And you can see a bit of damage on the front right of Lockwood's car. He will be feeling the effects of that, especially down the straights, with the damage just affecting the aerodynamic efficiency of this Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car. Not as good a run as Siakola in front, and now Lockwood is just going to have to sit here. He was one of the drivers who did well last time out, finishing top 5 for the week last time in Zandvoort. But Lockwood hasn't. He was saying that he hasn't quite got the car dialed in. But I tell you what, Martin, he's giving it a good go here and seems to be doing well in this car.
Well, ironically for him, when he's in that slipstream, it actually limits the damage that the car is doing in the air, because it's not using all of its aerodynamics anyway. It's where he gets into the corners that's going to be the real issue, when he's lost the front splitter, the dive planes, where the air isn't running around the car the way it should. So that's why he was slower onto the straight we saw there, and that's where he's going to continue to lose out. Verstappen got by Usiakala up to 7th place a few laps ago, but his pace isn't what the leaders is. He's 8.0 seconds behind now, so some big gaps outside the top half dozen, outside the top 6 of Sanchez to Verstappen. Yeah.
Just noticed on my timing screen, Gianni Vecchio has had an issue down at the chicane at 7 and 8, and the driver has dropped down to 32nd now as Jeremy Bootloop has made his way past. So, yeah, little issues for Gianni further down the order, and that's going to cause him issues further on in this race.
Oh, that's, yeah, pretty straightforward. Rear wheels on the curb, just unsettling the car, and suddenly he's gone from being Supercup to Rallycross, and yeah, sank like a stone, didn't he, Paul? That was it's so easy to do, to ride the curb in the wrong place, just to allow the car to slide a little bit wide from under you, and you probably knew that was coming for 3 or 4 seconds before he even got to the curb, because the car's trajectory was just all wrong.
I think there will be all manner of swearing being said in that sim rig when that happened. He'll be disappointed with himself and frustrated with himself, but you can't let the emotion of the instant get involved here, as well, we're already on the final lap here, Martin, and still this battle for 4th place is ongoing.
Yeah, exactly, and the Aussie really pushing hard, Dane Warren, on our Norwegian in 4th place, Tommy Husgaard. Again, we talked about this last week in Zandvoort. You know, Max Benecki there with no points really makes the rest of a season a struggle. If you get a big hatful of points anywhere in the top 10, anywhere in the top 5 ideally, never mind even on a podium, then it's a really good weekend. And of course, points for the top 5 in qualifying, points in race 1 for our top 20 drivers before we even get into the main race, race 2. So it's really important for Tommy Husgaard that if there's a lunge from Dane Warren on this final lap, he judges whether or not to let him take the position and keep the points for 5th, or whether he wants to hang on. For Max Benecki, though, Zandvoort is forgotten. He qualified well. He started on the 2nd row of the reverse top 8 grid. He led into the 1st corner. He leads out to the final corner. It is victory for Max Benecki. Sinji Setsos in 2nd. Jared Filzel rounds out the podium as they continue to stream across the line. Tommy Husgaard, Dane Warren, Alejandro Sanchez, the top half dozen. And then breathing space for the flagman before 69 there on the left. Max Verstappen comes through. You can see the damage there on Alexei Usiakala. 110 has damage on the front as well. That is the car of Christopher Dambeets. And looks like he is not particularly keen on getting the car back in a hurry either. So, Paul, that incident for our championship leader, Sebastian Job, how much is he going to be ruining that now?
Well, I mean, he's still making his way around on this final lap. That's how much he's ruining it. 36th place then. Not as bad as Joshua Rogers, though, because he's 37th and out of the race. But as you mentioned in the commentary, these final finishing positions do set your grid position for the feature race, 30-minute race. So Josh Rogers and Sebastian Job are going to be starting next to each other, and we've seen how hard those two can fight.
Yeah, and not too far away from them, 31st is Graham Carroll as well. But it's Max Benecki who will start on pole from Sindri Setsource. Jared Filzel will be on the inside of row 2 with Tommy Usgaard alongside him. Dane Warren and Alejandro Sanchez will be row 3 of our main race grid. And Max Verstappen, who went from 33rd to 21st in race 1 in Zandvoort, 21st to 11th in race 2, starts the main race here with hopefully a square and repaired car. He will be 7th, where he finished in our first 15-minute sprint. Alexei Usiaka in 8th, ahead of Brian Lockwood and Kevin Ellis Jr., representing Scotland, ahead of Northern Ireland's Jamie Fluke. The Iberian battle, Ricardo Castelletto held on ahead of Catalan Marc Perez. Martin Kroenke, the German driver, down in 14th, ahead of Brazil's Jeff Gyasi. Christopher Dambits, Josh Anderson, Carl Janssen, Marcus Jensen, and Johan Hart rounded out the points scorers. Top 20 score points, and the remainder, well, that's where they will start. And picking the bones out of this, least worst, probably for Graham Carroll, 30th, not too far from some points. And this is now Paul Smith total damage limitation for Graham Carroll, who was 2nd, 2 points off the leader, Sebastian Job, and how many? 2 ahead of the 3rd place man, last year's champion Josh Rogers. And Job and Rogers, as you pointed out, starting in fact 36 and 37, so diametrically opposite on the penultimate and anti-pre-penultimate row of the grid.
That's one way of putting it. Yes.
It's at pre-penultimate and anti-pre-penultimate. I under-penultimated there.
But yeah, it's going to be an intriguing second race here, and it's amazing how with this championship, with the dynamics can just flip so quickly, and well, the championship's wide open once again for somebody else to come through and to take a lead in this one.
Well, let's see. Outside the top 3, Job out, Carroll out, Rogers out. 3 big fat zeros. Usgaard scored for 4th. Brian Lockwood scored. He was in the top 10. Dane Warren was in the top 10. Jamie Fluke was just outside,
yep,
but scored well. Alejandro Sanchez, he was 8th in points, scored well. Matt Backham, not so much. Alexei Usiakala, and Sindri Setsource, who was 12th. So behind the top 3, drivers who did well in Zandvoort, or moderately well, have also done pretty decently here.
Certainly have, and these drivers, as we'll look at a replay then of what happened in that one, and it'd be interesting. I'd be interested to hear the thoughts of Will and Connery on this one, because it was such a pivotal moment in the race here, Martin.
It all started with Dane Warren, didn't it? Checking up early, Sebastian Job in the 22 car, lost momentum, got passed by 2 cars. They're right in front of him with the red bonnet. Josh gets turned around, and that's by Alejandro Sanchez, and that's just a disaster for everybody following. 2 or 3 laps later, it might have taken out 1 or 2 cars. In the opening couple of laps, you're looking at taking out 1 or 2 dozen cars, because there's no way of avoiding that fast-moving machinery. And Sebastian Job didn't start the fire, but he was the petrol that got poured onto it, I'm afraid.
Indeed. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Paul. We'll be back with you in just a couple of moments' time. And well, Connery, I think they've both said it in a lot of detail, but this championship, we always say, can be shaken up in a heartbeat, and that is exactly what we saw on the sprint race here today.
Yeah, it's funny how things turn out, right? It's, Max Benecki having an absolutely terrible race at Zandvoort, and now things have turned to gold for him as he wins the sprint race. Of course, still needs to convert the feature as well, but Sebastian Job, Josh Rogers, Graham Carroll, all big performers last week out, down at the bottom end of the grid for this feature race. So this is going to be a very, very interesting dynamic. And as a result right now, drivers like Tommy Erskard, for example, who have been consistently in the top 5 in all the races so far this season, they're sitting pretty because they haven't had the trials and tribulations that some of the drivers at the very front have had.
And what have you always said? This championship is one about being consistent, not necessarily about just winning races. But I will say, the driver out front, Max Benecke, in that Porsche 24 by Redline car, he is going to be smart. And we haven't seen Benecke smile for quite a while in terms of our coverage here, Connery. But right now, Benecke knows he's got pole position for the feature race, and that will mean that he hopefully can do exactly what he did in the sprint and just drive away.
Yeah, I think that is going to be the case as well. As long as he gets through lap number 1 comfortably, he isn't challenged early on by Setsos into turn 1, then I think he'll be off and away. But if Setsos can get a really, really good start here and be able to challenge Benecke into that first sector, then all bets are going to be off, depending on the outcome of that particular battle. But yeah, this the start of the season here is shaping up to be a very, very interesting one indeed, where no one's come out as a front runner yet.
And what about Sindre Setsas as well? Because he, of course, is part of Core Sim Racing. They did so well in our support race here today. And actually, Connery, I'm seeing a trend here. Those that do well in the support race, their teams, they nail the track. They do well in the Caymans. They do well in the Super Cup.
Yeah, that you know, hyped up performance sort of transferring over to some of the other Core Sim Racing drivers, that is for certain as well. But, you know, setting up for this feature race at the moment, I'm just having a look at how the grid is going to be. Max Verstappen's going to start in P7 for the next race, and we haven't seen him start solidly inside the top 10. He was just on the border, actually in 10th. At the start of the sprint race, but now he has a lot more time to work with, and he has a pretty good grid spot. I wouldn't be surprised if Verstappen actually mixes it in and goes for a top 5 in this instance, because he's certainly capable of not doubting that at all. But this field is very, very strong.
So, Connery, it's at that stage of the game that I'm going to ask you who is going to be the race winner of the feature, because, of course, the winner of this will get themselves $1,000 for winning the feature. Second place, $400. So you got to remember as well, third place, also a cash prize as well. But is it going to be Benecke? Is it going to be Setors? Is it going to be someone else?
I have to be careful here because I got it wrong for the sprint race. So I said Benecke is not going to win this race. And what does he go and do? He goes and wins the race due to everyone coming together ahead of him. So I've got to be careful with my predictions to try to not be wrong again. But in this instance, I'm saying Benecke is going to win the feature race, and see if that works out in my favor.
Well, currently track conditions, I'm just having a look. It is 66 degrees Fahrenheit. Ironically, it's cooler than it is in the United Kingdom right now, with wind speeds about 5 miles an hour to the southwest. Humidity is 41%. There's a look, by the way, at the start of this race. You can just see all of these drivers looking to go 2, 3, 4 wide. I see 5 wide. 4 race back as they head themselves down into towards turn number 1. We always are going to see that here at Spain. Being the race leader, Connery, you have the opportunity to defend that race line, but the key thing will be holding the inside into turn number 1.
Yeah, that is going to be one of the big things, as you can see them follow their way through. Just, you know, not a lot of space to work with on lap 1 of these races, and you can see that especially in the mid-pack. Everyone just trying to keep off of each other, at least through the initial portions of the race there. But there were a couple of smashes a little bit later on, let me tell you that, with Job, with Carroll, and Josh Rogers involved in that. But, you know, cold tires is also a big issue here, which is why you sometimes see so many first lap incidents.
And we just saw the podium there, of course. That is where these drivers are looking to head themselves to at the conclusion of this 30-minute feature race where one driver will win $1,000 for getting themselves first place, but also points. Well, it's all shaken up. What is going to happen in race number 2? What will happen with the point standings? Let's hand it back over to Martin Haven and Paul Smith.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Connery. And welcome back, everybody, to the Circuit de Catalunya for our 30-minute main feature race with our top 3 in the championship in deep strife. Not one of them finished in the points. Not one of them will start in the top 20. But what it has done is it has moved Tommy Usgaard, who finished in 4th place, into the intermediate championship lead. So Usgaard keeping his nose clean in Zolder, being in the top 5 over the race weekend, finished 4th in the points, and after a 4th place finish in our sprint race, he is now the new points leader. So cars on the warm-up lap and getting ready to head to the grid. Paul, that means that the race winner from our first race of the day, Max Benecki, is the man who will lead them away from Sinja Setsource on the outside. Jared Filzel watching the start replay from race 1. He got too much wheel spin, slow away, and Benecki recognised that very quickly. He was starting behind Filzel there, dived to the outside. Setsource was stuck on the inside, and Benecki braved it out on cold tyres around the outside. Tommy Usgaard will start 4th, ahead of Dane Warren and Alejandro Sanchez. And then on the next row of the grid, the big name in this pack, Max Verstappen, ahead of Alexei Usiakalo. Brian Lockwood and Kevin Ellis Jr. will rejoin their battle from row 5, ahead of Jamie Fluke, Ricardo Castro-Ledo on row 6. On row 7 of the grid, Marc Perez, the Catalan driver, and Martin Krönke from Germany, ahead of Brazil's Jeff Gyasi and Germany's Christopher Dambeets. Then Josh Anderson, Carl Janssen. Looking further down the order, still have not got in those top 24 places to any of our top 3 point scorers. Martin Haven and Paul Smith calling the action as the race gets underway, and a good strong start from pole position from Max Benecki. And again, it is Jared Filzel who's in trouble. 94 cars being passed by Tommy Usgaard, and Max Verstappen has gone through as well, and Filzel is out. Goes off on the exit of the corner. He's not the only one. That's Alejandro Sanchez as well out. So a storming start off the grid from 7th place from Max Verstappen, and he finds himself in 4th or 5th position as the first lap here of 30 minutes racing gets underway. In fact, he is in 3rd place with a side-by-side battle beside him, Paul Smith.
Yeah, really close action, really tight battling. Tommy Usgaard was one of those cars that went off at turn number 2, so big drama. Carl Janssen has had an incident down at turn number 5. There's a number of drivers falling down our timing screen here. That's all I can tell you, really, but it's a battle for 4th place. Jared Filzel, once again, not the greatest start of this race, having to battle from fellow Australian Dane Warren in 5th place, with Alexei Usiakalo right behind them, putting the pressure on. But that front 3, they're trying at the moment to try and get a little bit of a breakaway while these two fight for 4th place.
And of course, they've been given that air gap because the cars that would have been filling it were off on corner 1 and corner 2. So it's an artificial gap at this stage. Nobody's really made a big break, but a hole has opened up. And you're right, Benecki, Setsource and Verstappen, blimey, that's going to be a little bit of pressure for Setsource, knowing that Max is a no-holds-barred racer. Then the next group, Filzel, Dane Warren, Alexei Usiakalo, as you say, 43 Brian Lockwood, and 98 Kevin Ellis. Predicted that battle would continue, and so it is. Behind them, number 14, Marc Perez, the Catalan driver. He was in the top 6 in the first race. And behind him, Martin Krönke, Christopher Dambeets, the 2 German drivers trying to cling on to this tail of the 4th place battle, effectively, because it's Jared Filzel and all other runners. Benecki, Setsource and Verstappen with just a second clear as they ended lap 1. So the top 3, Verstappen's the danger man, surely. Benecki, does he worry about him, Paul? Because as far... Oh! Now, was that contact, or was that just a major car issue? Who flew off there? Was that Dane Warren?
It was Alexei Usiakalo.
It was Alexei.
Yeah, so what happened there? I think he's possibly just got his braking wrong.
Yep.
Had a bit of a half spin into the gravel and the dirt, and before you know it, he has gone from being in 6th place, he's all the way down to 16th, so 10 places lost just from one mistake. Just carried a little bit too much speed into the corner. There you see it on the replay, and well, look at that train of cars just working their way past him.
And it's so easy to do. You know, the cameras don't always show it, but it is steep downhill into turn 5, and turn 5 is a lot tighter than it looks like it's going to be. It's sort of the opposite of Copse Corner at Silverstone. And so, yeah, he just got in too hot, couldn't. He had to really stand on the middle pedal to avoid contact with the cars in front, and that's cost him. He's down to 16th as they get through Sector 2 on this lap. So this battle continues. Just behind our lead group, this is for 4th, Jared Filzell and Dane Warren. Warren with the bright yellow highlights on the car makes him very easy to spot in traffic. And of course, those nice mint green wheels as well. I do like a bit of mint green. Can't argue with that on a racing car. It's almost as good as lime green. And those two starting to ease away, aren't they, from the Lockwood and Ellis Jr. battle. And you're looking a little further back now. That's Jensen. And he is chasing Marcus Jensen, chasing Antoine Higuelin, the Frenchman. In fact, Higuelin having a better race weekend this weekend than he did in Zandvoort, but it's the opposite side of the coin for his young teammate Thibaut Casubon, who was in 10th place in the points after Zandvoort and is struggling here to be anywhere near the top 20. Sebastian Job starting to work his way up the order now, but it's a long job if it's going to take him as long to get by everybody as it is to try and get by 31 David Williams here.
Yes, that's 18th and 19th. It's worth pointing out in the pits we've got Casabon, we've got Mitchell de Jong, Gregor Hutu, Ricardo Castraledo, Jamie Fluke, Graham Carroll, all on pit road, all out of this race. So absolute drama at the start of that race. Big incidents throughout it. We're going to get some replays, I believe, of the start. So you're seeing, I mean, Verstappen just made the move round the outside, and it's all just a bit of table tennis and ping pong in the middle of it, bouncing off of each other, and off they went into the kitty litter. So that's what happened in that group. But you saw how Verstappen just went, well, if you're all going on the inside, I'll just go around the outside of turn 1. And yeah, he didn't gain those positions through others having accidents. He gained those positions because he put his car around the outside.
Well, remember when Lewis Hamilton made his first start here against Fernando Alonso for McLaren and just drove around the outside of Alonso into turn 1. Alonso went, you don't do that. Well, I did. Riding with our Vodafone on board with our, well, was the man who brought the championship lead here to Barcelona, Sebastian Job. Right in front of him, car number 31. As you said earlier, this is the battle for 18th and 19th place. So David Williams hanging on to 18th, 19th place at the moment. In the points for Sebastian Job, not many, but more than none. And unfortunately, Usgaard, who scored for 4th place and took the championship lead in race 1, he's going to get a 0. Carroll is going to get a 0 as well, the 21 car. I think a couple of them are looking at trying to rejoin, but it's not happening. Jamie Fluke, he was in 7th place coming in here after a good weekend in Zandvoort. He's going to get a 0 for this race as well. So Job, at least now, anything that's not a 0, Paul, is going to be better.
Yeah, it's those Job looking to the inside there as we just have a look then. That battle, Filzell and Warren. Warren has impressed so far this season, I have to say. I've been really looking forward to seeing his driving. He's one of the new qualifiers to the championship, and he's holding back a driver who was a race winner last season at Watkins Glen in Jared Filzell, and at Nürburgring, let's not forget that. So, you know, Jared has got experience of running up at the front and pushing on forward, but right now he's struggling to be able to get close enough to make a move, as Max Verstappen in front, I can see on my timing screen, has managed to make it ahead into 2nd place, so move him up ahead of Sindre Setsos. Yeah,
again, so that was a turn 1-2 flip-flop, I imagine. Max trying to dummy to the outside, got Setsos to brake late. Let's take a look with our Vodafone onboard replay. Verstappen is in second place. He's 1.2 behind Benecki, the leader, and it will, I'm sure, show to be a classic turn one pass.
Yeah, we'll have a look at that then. Yeah,
wow.
Late move that from Max, and it was almost as if Sindre decided to just get out the way there. Flashed the headlights as well, just for good measure. But yeah, Max moved up in second place. Yeah, and Setsource, I think, caught really by surprise there. I think he thought, no, he's not coming here, and then suddenly there he was, and that was a real flinch, wasn't it? The car almost off track and into the barriers. And just before that, as you pointed out, Paul, Dane Warren had moved up into fourth place ahead of Jad Filzel. Filzel was he was 8th in qualifying, on pole for the 15-minute sprint, fluffed the start, didn't have the traction, maybe too much wheel spin, and dropped down the order. Ended up on the podium, but it doesn't look like he's got race pace at the moment. Maybe he's worked his tyres a little hard in the opening couple of laps, but Dane Warren certainly has moved up well, and he looks pretty quick. Looking back now from 31, we're in 18th place towards 22. Job is diving down the inside. In fact, wow, okay, what's happening here? Williams cut across the chicane. That's what's happened. He's had to give up the place. Yeah, he's had to just back off the throttle, because the simulator, if you cut the course, it tells you to slow down and give back that time that you've gained, and that's what he's had to do there, and that's allowed Job, Rogers, Allender, Cholak, Half and Williams as well to all go past, as we'll have a look then at the Vodafone replay. And here we go. Job decides to just look, but it's just Williams. Back end. Loses the back end right across the inside of the chicane, and he just has to be patient and wait until the simulator says, right, you've given up enough time, you can go now. Scoreboard pressure. It's that classic pressure when you know somebody is harassing you in every corner. You just try and eke out every fraction of an extra meter under braking, and that time again coming in just a little too hot. So Job went by in the 22 car, and he now moves up to 18th place. So Josh Rogers behind him, 92. These were two of our top three in the championship after the Zandvoort weekend. Rogers was in third, and then Valtteri Allender, car number 77. He was the third car that benefited from that mistake. And in fact, Marin Cholak has also got by. He wasn't gifted a pass by the lack of throttle response for David Williams, but perhaps he managed to draft by him down the straight. So Marin Cholak, car number 4, a real-time racer who I've commented on in all sorts of different places, although in Spain it would have been Valencia for the World Touring Car Support races that he was in, rather than here in Catalonia. So he's now moved up to 21st, and David Williams, that one little outbraking moment dropped him in the end from 18th to 22nd. Looking out wide, Josh Rogers there, wasn't he, Paul Smith? Fringes of the gravel traps. Got to be careful there. They're like magnets. They will suck you in. Yeah, and spit you out as well. It'll send you firing across in towards the wall, that's for sure, with those gravel traps. But it just goes to show how close this series is, how many positions were lost just by one little mistake. We saw it at the start of the race with Alexei Yakola, with that small mistake at the hairpin of turn 5. Basically the drivers first to 30th are only covered by 25 seconds. It is rather close action, considering that they're all scrapping it out for every position. Well, the battle that we're looking at now, Sebastian Job's last lap, 46.61, that's his fastest of the race. Josh Rogers' fastest, 46.7. Valtteri Allender, 46.8. Marin Cholak, 47.0. So we're talking about tenths of a second on a 2.5-mile Grand Prix circuit in a car that's now starting to feel the pace a little. We're fast approaching the mid-distance point in our 30-minute encounter. Looking a little further up the order, quite a long way further up the order, Jad Filzel. Again, I'm still feeling that his car is not where he needs it to be here. Look, he's dropped away from Dane Warren, and now he's got to worry about Brian Lockwood. And Lockwood, don't forget, he was in the top 3 or 4 in both races, ended up 5th in the points in Zandvoort, and again, he's firmly in the top 10. Softly, softly, catchy monkey. Brian Lockwood is having a good
Oh, I probably shouldn't even start that sentence, should I? Good start to the season. So more valuable points, and I would be very surprised if he doesn't get Phil Zell before the end of the race.
Well, one thing that will be helping the drivers out here today, and maybe catching out drivers if they've set the car up for the hotter conditions, it has actually cooled off compared to race number 1, the heat race. It's now 34 degrees Celsius as track temperature, so down 4 degrees on the track, so they will be feeling that effect a little bit. Maybe they have a little bit more grip than they had last time. You can see it with the American measurements there, 94 degrees Fahrenheit, completely clear skies.
I think you'll find that's imperial.
Imperial, yes. There's only one country that uses imperial measurements for temperature, and that's the United States of America. But
nowadays,
yeah,
exactly so.
Yeah, these drivers, they will be feeling that and feeling the benefits of that. It'll just give them that little bit longer tyre life in this race, which is crucial in a 30-minute race.
And of course, if you want to really simulate what it's like being a Super Cup car, then you need your rig in a sauna. And you need to be wearing your ski gear as well, or a full race suit and helmet and all the underwear, just to add that full heat element into it. Max Benecchi the leader by 1.5 from Max Verstappen. I haven't been watching that gap, remiss of me, I know. I think it has come down though, hasn't it? Let's take a look. Benecchi's last lap 46.7, Max 46.8, so maybe not. Benecchi's best a 46.3, Max's a 46.3. So you go to the second digit. Max's best lap was 200ths quicker than Max Benecchi's.
Yeah, well, we're having a look at a replay because there's been all sorts of action going on further down your field. Marcus Jensen, they were going 4 wide into turn number 10 there. Josh Rogers and Sebastian Job getting involved as well. So those two with, is that Martin Kroenke actually pulling off to the side of the road? It was. So he's decided to park it. That was what the replay was of.
Was Kroenke. I thought maybe it might have been number 4 car, Malin Chollet, but he's still shown as running, so you're right. Back to Brian Lockwood, Jared Filzell. And again, let's take a look at the fastest laps that they have produced. Brian Lockwood, a 46.500, 800ths of a second slower, a 5.80 for Jared Filzell. So Filzell does not quite have the speed. And I'm thinking he didn't start strongly in either race. He's using a lot more road. I just don't think he's got the traction that he needs. I think he's running too deep into corners. He's washing out too wide. You can see that right behind Jared Filzell, Brian Lockwood is able to use different bits of the racetrack that Jared isn't. And I think maybe that's Filzell's underlying problem, is he's not got a setup that's really allowing him to stand the car on its nose.
Certainly not. He has been struggling. Looking back at Josh Rogers and Bobby Zelensky, so the two teammates, the American and the Australian. The Australian living in Germany, just to add some confusion for us here in the commentary booth. But they're stuck behind, that is Alexei Yukiola. Now we know that Yucola's actually got the pace in that car because he was up towards the front of the field in that first race. And
Did, yes. But don't forget that he got shuffled off, so I'm not quite sure what damage that's done. And actually, it's interesting you mentioned Bobby Zelensky, because that's 2 words that we didn't use in 45 minutes of racing in Zandvoort. Never once mentioned his name. Now, again, he's in 16th place, so, you know, he's mid-ish way, not even midway up the points, but they are stuck behind the fin, aren't they? And Alexei is just basically planting the car on the apex and going, okay, find a way round, guys, because I'm not going to help you on this. And Rogers needs to get on with this. He needs to dispose of his teammate, and he's going to do it here into turn 4. He goes through neatly in turn 3. And he needs to get on with this. He needs to get by Yukiola and just try and jump forward to the next group, up to Marcus Jensen, car number 12, who's in 14th place ahead of them. And it's so tantalising where you can see where the next group of cars is. Just got to get rid of this wretched car right in front of you.
Yeah, but it can be so difficult as we're actually looking at the onboard of Joshua Rogers. Well, on the left-hand side of the screen, the right-hand side of the screen is our TV picture. So really good to see how they compare and how they look when you're going around this circuit. But Rogers putting the pressure on. getting hard onto the brakes. A little bit damage on the front right of his bonnet, you can see there. So having a little bit of issues with front end damage, but it won't be affecting him too much. Being sat behind, as you mentioned earlier, Martin, being sat behind, it's not going to affect him too much. But really, he's got to keep that pressure on, but he's got to make the move sooner rather than later. And I can actually see on my timing screen that Sebastian Job has had yet another incident. He's dropped down to 28th, and he's had a bit of a spin, I feel.
Gap is coming down for the leaders as well. Max Benecchi leads Max Verstappen by 1.35. It was 1.57 2 laps ago. So Benecchi is being reeled in. Yeah, we're going to take a replay at another incident. Is this going to be the Sebastian Job one? Our Vodafone replay. Okay, Sebastian Job, and he was still chasing the 31 car, wasn't he? David Williams for what was 19th place, little bit of contact, through he goes on the inside, Paul, but just gassing it up too quickly, and that was just desperate to try and force his way through on the inside. Couldn't quite make it. There is your leader, and behind is the hunter. So Max Verstappen from the 30s to the 20s to 11th over 2 races in Zandvoort. Now he is looking at maybe trying to make it onto the top step of the podium here in his second ever Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup weekend.
I kind of keep on forgetting that he's actually a rookie in this championship, and he's new to the series just with the way that he drives. But we can't really, there's not enough words to describe the level of talent and commitment that Max has for the series. But the drivers all around him, they're all pushing hard as well. And I would say, actually, to be fair to Sindre, Max Verstappen hasn't really pulled away that far from third place, and one little mistake, one little incident, and Setsos and Dane Warren, should I say, could actually be moving back forward again.
And Dane Warren's the mover here, isn't he? Because you're right, Max is gradually reeling in Benecchi. I'm not sure with 10 minutes left it's gradually enough. Setsos just about a second behind, but suddenly Warren is a car length behind. So there's your battle. Warren has got ahead of Phil Zell, left him 2.7, nearly 3 seconds behind him in 4 or 5 laps, and he is now all over the man we ride with, Sindre Setsos. As we have the Vodafone on board, we're watching Max Verstappen, and as you say, you can't stress how highly enough how well Max is doing. You expect a Formula One driver to be pretty good at driving things, but this is not what he was expecting. As I said this in Zandvoort, not what he was expecting to do with his year, whereas Benecchi was, Setsos was. All these guys have spent the winter building themselves up to speed to qualify for this Premier Supercup Championship, and Max has kind of gone, yeah, I fancy a bit of that. Well, I'll do a bit of truck racing. I'll do a bit of Legends. I'll do a bit of F1. Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, I'll do that.
Well,
so he's brought himself up to speed, hasn't he?
You say that, but he had to qualify for the series like everybody else who's new to the series. So he had to go through that qualifying process over the winter, so he was already committing to this championship back in October, November, as it's all getting a bit close there.
Trouble for Setsos. We talked about this, didn't we, when we were talking about the track? Hit those curbs hard. There's no grip in the air. That's just the simple matter of it. And Setsos really under pressure from Dane Warren. Dane in the 57 car. Is he going to have a look down the inside? He's got to try at least and show his nose into turn 1. Being that close and not making it look like you're having a pass. He's already got Setsos rattled. He's got to keep doing it. He should have made a move, or looked like he was making a move into turn 1, inside or outside. Make the driver in front go to places where he wouldn't naturally go. Pull to the inside at the last minute. Just make him defend. Don't just sit there letting him dictate the pace. Warren's got there, and you talked about this before, particularly in the later stages of our support race, that you've got to arrive and get by while you've got a speed advantage. Once you're stuck at the speed of the car in front, you then have to build up a speed advantage again, and that's tough.
Yeah, as we have a look at the Vodafone on board then, up over the curb of 9. But yeah, Warren, he's got that advantage. We've seen him just work his way through this field. He started 5th in this race, fell back a little bit at the start, and he's had to work his way back forwards. It's been a really impressive drive from Dane. You know, two rounds of this championship that he has really been pushing hard. And well, you said you like mint green. There you go, Martin. We get a good look at those wheels.
I love when the director's listening. That's just great. I mean, they are a fabulous colour, and quite how it ties into the rest of the car, I neither know nor care. Those alone are worth their weight in gold. They're just a great looking wheel. Again, now Warren nicely out of the final corner, no fringe of the gravel chap, just using every inch of available grip. But again, he's got to show, he's got to make it look like he's having a pass. He's got to make Set Source think rather than just drive on his instincts, and he's not doing enough of that yet. When you're in your rig, you haven't got that physical pressure of the car behind you as you would do if you were in a physical car on this track. So you've got to make the driver see things in his periphery the same as you would do. Be in his mirrors, not the middle one, on the side ones, and be in his mirrors in the wrong place. Make him start thinking about things that you've got no intention of doing, as well as making him defend. You want him offline into turn 1, or you're never going to get him into turn 4. You want him offline in turn 3, or you're never going to get him into turn 5. You've got to force him to do things that are not in his best interests. And at the moment, I'm afraid Dane Warren's not quite able to do that. And I don't think that's necessarily entirely from lack of trying. I think that Sindri Setsource is just doing a stellar job here of controlling his car and his emotions.
Yeah, fantastic job again. Another one of our rookies is Sindri. So yeah, he really is doing a good job here. Looking at a possible podium. Oh, I've just seen on my timing screen a little issue for Yakola. Alexei Yakola has had an issue down at the hairpin of turn 10, so hopefully we get to have a look at that one. But yeah, it's dropped him down a few places, down to 19th. So it's going from bad to worse for Alexei Yakola. And in fact, here we go. We'll get to see a replay of it now. Down in towards turn number 10 then. Everything seems fine. And here comes Bobby Zelensky. Oof, little of a tap. The car is light at the rear because it's on the brakes, and it's so easily just sent half around.
Well, there was a fraction of an inkling of a slender half chance, maybe loose stab, and Bobby Zelensky was in it like a rat up a drain pipe, wasn't he? So I'm afraid. And I think we thought that Usiakala had problems with his brakes earlier on anyway, and it just looks like he's still having trouble getting the car stopped again. Back towards the top of the pile, Brian Lockwood, Kevin Ellis Jr. Brian Lockwood now has left Kevin Ellis Jr. behind and is closing in on Jared Filzell. So again, Filzell and Kevin Ellis Jr. struggling just a little bit for pace, aren't they?
Yeah, it just seems that in this second race they're not quite there on point. Just seem to be missing that few tenths of a second on a lap. And in a 30-minute race like this, we're on lap 15 now. It all adds up throughout this race. So definitely, Lockwood has been impressive. He's been putting the pressure on a few of these drivers and getting those moves done. 9th to 6th at the moment is his progression here. So up 3 spots, but he wants more. He wants to get in that top 5 again, Martin.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? And he needs to keep his season on track, doesn't he? Brian Lockwood pushing on hard at the moment and just braking on the curbs. That's always slightly dangerous, but Jared Filzell in front is holding him up. I think Lockwood has the option or the pace to get by. Look a little further back again, 14th and 13th place. 14th is Marcus Jensen, and he's got Thomas Tatele in front of him, car number 107. So that's the 13th place car. Christopher Dambeach just a little further in front of him. But the interest here is whether or not Josh Rogers, the reigning champion, can move up from 15th. Who was that going very slowly?
I think that was somebody leaving pit road. It's Casabon.
Yeah, I think it was.
Casabon.
Yeah, he's one of just 2 triple-digit number cars. Christopher Dambeats we'd already seen just in front. So, yeah, Casabon, the teenage rookie, had a great opening race weekend. Ooh, and they were wheel-to-wheel just in front. So, who would that have been? Patrick Holtzman, David Williams, maybe? David Williams, Alejandro Sanchez. It is the number 7 car of Jeff Gyasi. Gyasi with the Brazilian flag on the rear, and 36 is Josh Anderson, who pinches an inch back. Gyasi around the outside, he's had damage as well. Grip, well, he's got some, hasn't he? So just hangs up. But that is a great bit of late race, refusing to give up. I don't care if I'm on the wrong line. If I stick on it long enough, it becomes the right line again.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of touring car education going on there. Get the shoulder out and give it a little bit of a rub. Come on, out of my way, give me some space. And that's exactly what Jeff did. I said last week how I was impressed by Jeff Gyasi until he had that unfortunate issue in the second race of as the Zandvoort round. But certainly he's not doing too bad here, 9th place, but Josh Anderson doing a cracking job in 10th place, putting the pressure on and keeping it on.
Yeah, Josh Anderson with the Vodafone on board, chasing Jeff Gyasi. And you say, 9th place, not too bad. It's a field of 40, don't forget. So that's top 25 percentile, plus top 3 in the championship are way out in the boonies behind him. So this is another good race weekend for the Brazilian. Now, again, you see, Josh Anderson forcing the issue all the way down the straight. He made Gyasi sit in the middle of the track, which is not where you want to be for velocity through the first corner, and he made him defend that inside pass. And that's what I wanted to see from Dane Warren on Sindre Setsource. And I'm not sure that Warren was quite close enough, or Setsource was feeling vulnerable enough, as maybe Gyasi was there, to defend all the way down the middle of the track. Into the final 30 seconds. I was about to say into the final 3 minutes, but things happened, and that was 3 minutes ago. Max Verstappen, 1.3 seconds behind Max Benecke. Benecke has to give this one away for the Dutchman to win, and Sindre Setsource in 3rd place is going to settle for that if he can, ahead of Dane Warren. There's your race leader. He's down into the RACC complex for the final time here. 8 seconds on the clock. It will have expired by the time he gets the line. So Max Benecke is leading from Max Verstappen, who is still closing and will be about a second behind at the end of the race. But if Benecke doesn't outbrake himself here, and he doesn't, he has got this one in the bag. He made a great start to race 1, having had a strong qualifying session and avoided dramas. And it is a big Barcelona weekend for Max Benecke. Max Verstappen takes 2nd, a big weekend for him as well. And Sindre Setsource for Corsim Racing in 3rd, inches ahead of Dane Warren. Jared Filzel and the rest of them streaming across the line. And then we are looking for some of our championship hopefuls. Josh Rogers, 15th place for him. And Sebastian Job out of the points as they came across the line. 26th position for Job. Jack Sedgwick getting the final point in 25th place. So nothing for Job, nothing for Graham Carroll, who was also a race winner in Zandvoort and who was in 2nd in the championship coming here. Josh Rogers in 3rd, has lost his championship lead. Wasn't a great second race either, Paul Smith, was it, for Tommy Usgaard, who had a fine 4th place finish in the first race and ended up here down in 23rd. But that is your top 10. Max Benecke, Max Verstappen, Max Setsource. He's going to have to change his name, isn't he, to be in with the cool kids. Sindre Setsource in 3rd place. Great stuff from the Norwegian. Dane Warren and Jared Filzel, the compatriots, in 4th and 5th. Brian Lockwood from the USA in 6th position. Scotland's Kevin Ellis Jr. ahead of Spain's Marc Perez. Jeff Gyasi from Brazil in 9th, and Josh Anderson making it 3 Aussies in the top 10. So behind them, Antoine Egelin having a much better weekend here than he did in Zandvoort. So is Christopher Dambeats. Thomas Tesla, Marcus Jensen ahead of the champion Josh Rogers. Still a mixed bag for him. Bobby Zelensky in 16th, ahead of Valtteri Vilander, Marin Czolik, Alexei Usiakala, who went backwards and further backwards. David Williams rounding out the top 20. 21st place was Patrick Holtzman. Do you remember when he started on pole position in Zandvoort? No, he probably doesn't right now either. Alejandro Sanchez, Carl Janssen, Tom Eusgaard, one of our points leaders. In fact, the points leader coming into this race, Jack Sedgwick, the final point score in 25th. So 0 for Sebastian Job, Johan Hort, Mac Backham, Alexander Tiber, Jeremy Bouteloup, and the rest of them. And among the rest of them, also, unfortunately, Graham Carroll, Jamie Fluke, who was in the top 7 in the standings as well after the first weekend. So a tough weekend. We had 39 cars taking to the grid this weekend here in the Circuit de Catalunya. Well, Paul, was it the race that you thought it might have been after the 15-minute warm-up race?
I mean, that was sensational. It was great action out there. We saw some really hard charging drives. I'm thinking of people like Brian Lockwood and Ken Reynolds Jr. Matt Perez up from 13th to 8th as well. So some instance. I mean, you mentioned about Tommy Eustgaard. He got involved in that lap 1 shenanigans down at turn number 2. And while some of those retirements from the race, again, one of our championship contenders from last season, Mitchell de Jong, was out of the race. Jamie Fluke and Graham Carroll, the man who came into this championship this weekend, second place, out of the second race as well. So a bit of a mixed bag for some drivers, but others taking advantage of the opportunities, and Max Benecke stood the double. There's not a lot really you can say about that.
No, great weekend for him. Listen, among our YouTube viewers, Mark McDonald was saying, I hope the Porsche scouts are watching. Some of these guys might be okay in a real car. Well, the one that we absolutely know is okay in a real car finished second in our main race. So let's immediately throw back to Will and hear, if we can, from Max Verstappen.
Yeah, indeed. So we'll talk to him in just a moment. And I just want to make one quick point. First of all, thank you very much, Martin Haven and Paul Smith, for commentary of what has been an exceptional race in the Porsche Tag Heuer Supercup by iRacing, Esports Supercup by iRacing, sorry. But what I also want to talk about is August 1st, 2015. Because, Connery, that was the last time that Team Redline got a 1-2 in a World Championship Series race.
Wow, you're having to delve into the history books of World Championship competition to try and find that one. But yeah, this is absolutely great for not only the Porsche by 24 Team Redline car, but for Team Redline in general, considering how poor their showing was at Zandvoort, weren't anywhere near the major points-paying position. And now you come out of the feature race of Barcelona Catalunya round 2 and you pick up that 1-2. That is absolutely incredible. So Benecke has his season back on track. Verstappen's up there fighting, and now it's Rogers, Carroll, Job, all of those drivers that have to be heading into round number 3 now and trying to figure out where they're going to be in this championship. Because, like you said, in this sort of racing with a season this short, for all intents and purposes, you can't be having too many terrible races like this one.
Yeah, and we're going to talk to Max Benecke right now. And Max, I'll tell you one thing. A week ago, you probably wouldn't have wanted to talk to us after a race that you probably wouldn't have enjoyed at Zandvoort. But now, back-to-back victories here at Circuit Barcelona Catalunya, you've got to be happy now.
Yes, hi guys. I absolutely am. First race of the season, totally, crap from my side. Messed up the quali. So yeah, didn't want to talk to you, didn't want to talk to anyone, so just wanted to calm down, find some stuff in the setup of the car, practice hard, and in the end, this just worked out perfectly. The team did an incredible job in just 1 week, practicing hours and hours and nights after nights to get this car as fast as it was today. Still a bit, behind the top guys in the quali, but because of, the reversed grid in the first race, happy to be on P3 there, and then just had a very, very good launch directly around the outside of Gerard, and then from there on just leading the race. Concentrated as much as I could. The only fear I had really was that the draft is too huge, because we had a lot of practice, but we felt that we were quite decent on the straight, so that was our advantage, and I knew I just have to be very, very gentle with the tires, and that's what I did in both races. And in the end, super happy about it. Obviously, Sebastian Job, Joshua Rogers, so many people not in the front today, just like me in the first race. So the tables have turned again, and that's very good for my point of view.
Now, I was saying to the viewers a couple of moments ago, you of course have moved over from Pure Racing Team to join Team Redline. Of course, officially you're part of the Porsche 24 by Redline car, but having gone through the archives, this is the first 1-2 for Team Redline in almost 5 years of World Championship Series history. How does that feel for you?
Yeah, it's great. I'm very happy for all the guys also behind the action, looking into telemetry, pushing us, helping us out with everything else apart from just racing on track. So I'm very happy for the team overall. Also 1-2, Max did an incredible job. Started P7, I think, in the second race, and then all the way up to P2 after like 2 laps or 3 laps. So great there as well. Still can improve on others though, but everybody did a great job, and I'm very happy for the team. Definitely deserved for the last week.
We've done 2 very different racetracks in the first 2 rounds of the championship. The next round of the championship is going to be different again at Donington Park. What are your thoughts heading into that final round, the next round of the championship even? And is there anyone you want to give a shout out to?
Difficult track, Donington. Just a couple of corners, very, very short, even shorter than Zandvoort, I think. So it's going to be even tighter, and we just have to nail the quali again. But I'm very happy that we have at least a week in between, where we can just relax a bit and maybe not focus too much on racing, and then starting in maybe 7 days or so with the practice. So very nice. Obviously, I think maybe Dom Duhan can make the shout-outs later. Our team leader, he's here as well. But definitely shout out from my side, especially to everyone in the team, because that has been really an incredible job the last week. And obviously to you guys for that broadcast.
Not to worry. Thank you very much, Max Benecke. That is, as I say, Conrad, the first 1-2 in almost 5 years of Team Redline. And I must admit, I mean, I've said some things over the years, over Team Redline losing their way at points. They've been rebuilding over the last 2 years. This, for them, this is more than just a victory. This is that statement, that flag in the ground to say, hey, look, we're not just back, we're here to fight.
Yeah, and it's great to see them, at the forefront once again. It's, they're always a team that puts 110% into everything that they do, and at least in recent times on the iRacing side of things, it hasn't come up too fruitful, but now is when things maybe start to change for them. Of course, they had Benecke at the end of last season. They got Benecke at the end of last season, excuse me. So that was a great pickup for them, and now it's started to deliver them some results. You also had, of course, Max Verstappen in second place as well, and he's actually standing by to talk to us.
Yeah, indeed. So first of all, Max, you are officially Dutch once again. But secondly, you've got yourself second place in the feature race. You've got to be happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to see that I have a Dutch flag again. That's always good to have. But it was a good result for the team in general. I mean, I was pretty, I would say, pissed off after the first weekend where we just didn't have the good pace at all. So we worked hard, and I think we made some good steps for this race. And to come home in first and second, it was very, very positive. I mean, this field is incredibly tight, and it's really impressive, and it's really cool, to be a part of it as well. Very, very happy with this.
You had good launches on both of the races, and of course you were about 1.5 back from Benecke heading into the final 10 minutes of this race. Was there that want to try and go for the win, or was it just a case of holding station?
Max was also very fast, so I couldn't really catch up, and it was also not really my intention. I think it was way more important to be first and second as a team there. I don't mind finishing second here. It was just good. Max, I mean, is also in general just a bit faster. So no problems there.
And I said to Max earlier, you're part of one of the first Team Redline 1-2 in a World Championship Series on iRacing in almost 5 years. How does that make you feel?
Very good, and hopefully we can add a lot more to it throughout the season.
Well, thank you very much, Max Verstappen, coming home second place here today. We're going to talk to team principal Dom Duhan from Team Redline in a moment's time. But before we do that, Connery, you've got a Sindre Setsas.
Yeah, I do. The driver that comes home in third place here today in the feature race. And Sindre, it's been an overall good day for you as well, because you actually picked up second place in the sprint race as well. So that's a very healthy points haul in your championship fight.
Yeah, I'm super happy that any top 10 result I'm over the moon with in this series. So this is mega.
Yeah, and a fantastic performance for Core Sim Racing in this one as well. He did particularly well in the Sprint Challenge race before this one with Thomas Gibson, and now you come home in P3 in the feature for your team in the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup. How's the mood behind the scenes with all your teammates?
I think it's just climbing for for every race we do. We seem to have gotten really strong the last few months, and I think results like this prove what all the hard work we do actually pays off in the end. So yeah, I'm just super happy for the entire team as well, not just me. I'm also really happy for the people I work with for the series, and just shows that all the work we're putting in is paying off.
What was it about this race that sort of allowed you to unleash your pace? Because you didn't really have a great time at Zandvoort for the first round of the season, P14 in the sprint race, P13 in the main race there. Is this a track that really plays to your strengths, or is there some other element that resulted in you putting in the good result today?
I was just a bit too passive in qualifying at Zandvoort, and I just kind of went for it this time. Just trying to do the best I can. Luckily it was inside the top 8, which really helps, and especially when you're at the tail end of the top 8 you can start up front. I think that just really helped me in this race, because I saw in my mirror cars flying, so I think I was just ahead of that in both races, and I think that's just the main part in getting out of trouble in this series. Gets you a lot of positions.
Since we do have, well, at least unofficial updated points at the moment, we have you sitting in 4th place in the championship with 85 points, just 5 points behind Joshua Rogers in 3rd. So you've got to be optimistic now, at least coming into round number 3, that you'll at least be somewhere inside that top 10, maybe if not maintaining inside that top 5.
I can see what I can do. One of my main targets for this season was to get a podium in the series.
Well, there we go.
In this race, so that's one of the targets hit, I guess. My other target is to keep my license, and it's looking good for that right now.
Yeah, but both of those goals being met at the moment. But thank you very much for joining us. That was Sindre Setsas from Core Sim Racing, finishing on the podium in the feature race here today at Barcelona, Catalonia. Great result, Will.
Yeah, indeed, certainly. You've got to remember as well, Connery, of course, that Core Sim Racing at one point had that weird split that we can talk about for years, which ended up becoming G2 Esports and Red Bull Racing Esports. And, well, Core Sim Racing have beaten Red Bull Racing Esports today. And I think for those
Williams,
members...
Excuse me, Will. Before you go down that tangent.
Yeah, I know.
It was Williams Esports.
Yeah. You know what I mean. I just made a boo-boo. I make one boo-boo a broadcast. I'm going to be okay with that one. We're going to talk to Dom Duhan from Team Redline in just a moment's time. But the key thing for me, Connery, coming out of this race is that what we said back in the media day, consistency is key. And I think today we've learned that you've got to make sure you get that car to finish. You've got to make sure that you get that car to get into the top 10 as often as possible. Yes, wins are great. Yes, podiums are great. Yes, top 5s are great. But first of all, you've got to finish the race. And today, Red Bull Racing Esports and Kiwanis Sim Sports are going to be both licking their wounds because neither of them have a driver in the top 10.
Yeah, and that is a pretty disappointing result there, all things considered, for a team that's always looking to really scrap at the front, always trying to play for the big points. And in this race, simply wasn't to be for them, so they're going to have a look to try and recover at least a bit of ground coming into Donington Park, and of course heading into the round after that at the Circuit de la Sarthe as well, heading towards the midway point of the season, where we get a little bit of an idea of where everyone is, because it's been a pretty chaotic and topsy-turvy round number 1 and 2.
And I'm actually trying to work out the maths. The last time we saw no Rebel Racing esports drivers or kind of drivers inside the top 10, I don't think it happened last year, but we are going to think about that one in more detail. We were going to talk to Dom Duhan, but he's disappeared from us. So at that point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring back in Martin Haven and Paul Smith really quickly. Paul, I'm going to come to you first. Topsy-turvy race, but actually what it does, it sums up what we have here in the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing, in that anything can happen on a race weekend, and to quote Murray Walker, it usually does.
I always say that if is the biggest word in motorsport, and if Sebastian Job and Josh Rogers hadn't had that accident in race 1, they would have been in for a really good result and cemented their position at the top. But they didn't. Instead, they had those incidents in race 1 and in race 2 as well, and it means that we've got a change up in the order of how the standings are. So we're just waiting for that to be finalised and confirmed for us. But it's giving other people with those mistakes, the consistent drivers, that opportunity to move up and progress in the championship. And it goes back to what you said, Will. Consistency is key when you're wanting to win a championship. I can think of plenty of times where a driver has won only one race in a season. Keke Rosberg comes to mind immediately. Right. Winning a world championship with one race win because he was consistent, and that's what you need to win a championship.
And Martin, moving forward to our next race in a couple of weeks' time over at Donington Park, well, it hosted the European Grand Prix 1993 with that famous, infamous Sega trophy that was and wasn't. But we, at the same time, it's a track that so many people know and love, especially in the UK. I know it partially because back in my old days of going to music festivals that we can't do right now, I used to get very, very drunk and end up walking alongside the track at Donington Park, hosting a download festival. It's had so much history. It's such a great racetrack, but it's also one that many people underestimate.
You're showing your age here, Will. I was expecting you to say, name me another Formula One world champion that only won one win, and that was Mike Hawthorne.
Oh, my word.
Yeah, I know. So Sterling Moss won 4 Grand Prix that year. Hawthorne won 1, but he was the world champion in
1958.
And my other thing, as soon as you started talking about music festivals at Donington Park, I knew you were going to download and not the proper one, Monsters of Rock. Clearly.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question?
So Donington itself was a racetrack, of course.
Yeah.
You've got the famous Dunlop Bridge that everyone knows. But as a racetrack, it's one that so many drivers underestimate.
Look, it is actually packed with potential overtaking opportunities. It genuinely is. First corner, Red Gate, you can pass there. Down the crane of curves and around the outside. Once you get over the brow at Hollywood, if you're on the outside line and you are really brave and you've got a good setup, you can go around the outside there, and then you've got the inside line into the old hairpin. On the way up to Schwantz Curve, the left-hander that starts the climb up to the next sequence of right-handers, that's a move on the inside if you have got momentum and, again, the cojones in both hands. Coppice, double apex right-hander over a brow, really, really easy to get wrong, followed by a long straight. One of the things that Barcelona has, you can see it from the map, is a long straight followed by a tight corner. The other way is a tight corner followed by a long straight. And Coppice, is kind of a tight corner. It gets quicker, but it's very easy to go through the second element, over the brow, onto the top of the hill, and just make a mistake. And then you get down. Are we using the Melbourne Loop? So the full Grand Prix circuit, you know, again, through the little chicane, onto the Melbourne Loop, through Foggy Chicane. That's a great overtaking opportunity. And we will see contact there. There's no question about it in cars that are this similar, because somebody will brave it up on the inside and try and jump the chicane. Melbourne hairpin, again, it's so easy. Downhill, 180-degree right-hander, really, really easy to mess it up under braking. And then even the very final corners, you come around the Tom Wheatcroft suite onto the start-finish straight, you can mess that up as well. So it is full of overtaking opportunities. It's small, it's roller coaster, it's old school. Like Brands Hatch, where we go to the Grand Prix circuit later in the season, it's not a modern Grand Prix circuit. And that has its effect as well. When there is contact, there tends to be more carnage. So I think it's a mouth-watering prospect. They've got 2 weeks to really get their heads around it. Those that maybe aren't quite so familiar or I don't really like it, it doesn't flow, it's not me, ignore that. You've got to do well. And we've just seen that from Max Benecke. You've got to put everything behind you and just 100% focus on the race that you're doing, not the next one or the one after or the last one. You've got to be on your toes at Donington. If you're not, you're going to get swamped. Well, there is the calendar for the rest of this Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup. We're going to Donington Park, to the Grand Prix circuit, close to East Midlands Airport, so I think it'll be fairly quiet. There won't be too much avgas on the circuit. That should rubber in nicely. What would normally be the longest day weekend would see the 24-hour race at Le Mans. We will go to Le Mans on the Circuit de la Sarthe. That is not the short 2.5-kilometre Bugatti circuit they use for MotoGP for the 24-hour bike race. It's the full Mulsanne Straight down to Arnage, up through Indianapolis. It's just one of the world's greatest challenges, and perhaps even more than that is the Nordschleife of the Nürburgring. Again, these cars are of a different era to both Le Mans and especially to the Nordschleife. You need suspension, you need compliance, you need bravery. What you don't need is a roller skate. So setup is going to be so key to the Nürburgring. Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, it'll be a little bit like Barcelona. Lots of drivers will have driven it in all sorts of different things as they've learned their skills and cut their teeth. And again, it's quite forgiving in terms of pack racing. Road Atlanta. I love Road Atlanta, just outside Braselton, just north of Atlanta, Georgia. Another old school track. You know, it's like Donington Park, it's like Brands Hatch in its own way. It pitches, it dives, it's got niggly little corners, it's got huge ballsy corner right at the very end when you pile over the bridge and plunge downhill into the final turn. That is a real heart in the mouth moment every lap. Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. Who doesn't love Brands? And if they don't, they're wrong. Spa-Francorchamps. I mean, the tracks just keep coming, don't they? The challenges are so awesome in this series. And anything that ends up in Monza, in the Royal Park in the autumn, gets my approval of a seal without any question. It's a great place to go racing in the spring, in the autumn, in the summer. And it's a fabulous place to have a season finale. Who our contenders will be then? Well, they may not be the contenders that we had after Zandvoort. They may not be the contenders that we've got now. Well, I mean, everything could change in 2 weeks' time at Donington Park again. Max said it exactly right. You know, you've just got to sit down and focus on your setup, work with the teammates that you have, unless you're a privateer, work with your setup, and just try and go to Donington Park loaded for bear.
Yeah, indeed. So we hope they might have some championship standings coming up on your screen in just a moment. And final thing, Martin, I'm sure because you've been to Donington many, many times, have you ever been to a little co-op just down the road from Donington Park, where basically they have a normal supermarket 50-ish weeks of the year, and then they have basically the Grand Prix or the festival thing that they bring, and they take everything away, and it's basically sausages, bacon, red sauce, brown sauce, bread,
and
alcohol.
beer. Yeah. It's like every supermarket in the 25-mile radius of Le Mans, absolutely. Well, here are the standings then. We are 2 of 10 weekends in, 2 sprints, 2 full races for the 2020 Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup, and it is Dane Warren of Australia who is our points leader. He is 4 ahead of Brian Lockwood. Josh Rogers in 3rd place, as he was after the first race weekend. So we've got an Australian, American and Australian. And Sindri Setsos in 4th place, ahead of the man who brought the points lead. 72 points coming in. He's got 80 points leaving, only 8 points this weekend. He will not be looking back with too many good feelings on the Circuit de Catalunya, Sebastian Job. Tommy Usgaard briefly took the lead of the points after the sprint race, didn't score in the second race, so he's on 79 points, and Max Verstappen ties him 7th equal after the first couple of race weekends. If he's not in the top 3 at the end of the championship, it's because he's been summoned for clashing Formula 1 races or the like. Max Benecchi back up onto page 1 ahead of Graham Carroll, who was 2nd in the points after Zandvoort, and Alejandro Sanchez had a good race weekend here as well. 58 points, just under half what the championship leader Dane Warren has. And Dane Warren has had, I think it's fair to say, a very, very solid start to the season. I'm sure that he will watch this back and see what everybody else was doing, and probably will have a bit of a shout and be going, "Oh, mate, I didn't need to pass him. I knew I had him under control," and he may well be right. But Sindri Setsos, I thought, put up a great defence of that 3rd place and lost almost nothing in terms of pace, either to Max Verstappen or Max Benecchi, the 2 teammates ahead of him. So Setsos, again, great race weekend here. And these guys who have momentum, they've got to keep it going. You're allowed to stumble and trip once, but you've got to get back up, and then you've got to start being flawless. Job's 23 points behind. That's a race win already.
Indeed. And I feel like saying Chumbawamba right now. That'll be too obvious. But Paul, there's one thing about Donington in 2 weeks' time that you and I and Connie will know so well, and that is Donington Park and the slowdown penalties is so treacherous.
I can tell you from experience, Old Hall and Coppice, they are the worst points for slowdown penalties. And on lap 1, it is absolutely brutal. And with the championship being this close, with all these competitors being so close there on track, you're gonna lose. You're gonna end up at the back of the field by the end of lap 1 if you do end up with a slowdown penalty. So that's going to be a key point of drivers just trying to keep it clean, trying to keep it on the track, so that they don't end up with any of those penalties. And one final thought, Will, from me is thank you very much. I've now got that song stuck in my head.
Well, thank you very much as well, Paul. Thank you very much to Martin Haven. Thank you very much also to Connery Maddock. Connery, final thoughts, we head over to race weekend number 3, because after all, we have a new championship leader that almost no one predicted at the start of this season.
Yep, we do. Dane Warren leads the championship into Donington Park here on the updated point standings, only by 4 points over Brian Lockwood, who's in 2nd place. So technically 2 drivers we didn't expect to see at the top of the standings, P1, P2, into round number 3. Joshua Rogers in 3rd place, Sindri Setsos in 4th with Sebastian Job in P number 5. But it's my home track next here, well, even though I probably won't be living in Derby for that much longer, but it's still going to be some fantastic action that we'll get to see.
They'll be here live in 2 weeks' time on Porsche and iRacing's social media feeds on YouTube, on Twitch TV, and on Facebook. Thank you so much to all the people that's managed to make this broadcast work for us. In the back, we had Tyler Maxson, Hugo Louise, Androna Campati, and of course, on commentary, Connery Maddock, and Martin Haven, and Paul Matthew Smith. Well, that's it then from race weekend number 2 here in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup. A week ago, Max Benecchi and Team Redline were in the dust heading out of Zandvoort, but they bounced back, and now they are in position to take a stranglehold on this championship. We have a championship leader who we never would have thought would have been in P number 1 heading out of this event, but also we've got so much more racing to come. Don't forget, next week we have ourselves round number 4 of the virtual Porsche Mobile 1 Esports Supercup, and we'll be back in 2 weeks' time for race weekend number 3 in the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup. My name's Will Benson. Thank you so much for watching here today across social media. Thank you for watching, and goodbye from Circuit de Barcelona, Catalonia.
You